What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto controlled the power of heaven and hell in high school DxD and made every girl kneel before him? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Look, there she is, a male student whispered as a female with shoulder length, spiky, blood red hair passed his group by. I heard she works for the Yakuza. I think she works at one of those strip clubs. I mean, look at all that leather, another girl whispered, staring at the leather jacket with studded spikes. She disrespected Sitri senpai, a male whispered. Delinquent, another whispered as they stared at the 6 whisker scars on her cheeks. The girl in question had a leather jacket on instead of the normal school jacket. She had green eyes that changed on her mood. Her skin was tanned. She had an athletic build, having a modest C-cup. She had sunglasses tucked into her hair. Around her neck was a piece of opal stylized as a flame set in a leather choker. On her hands were matching rings, each a silver skull with ruby eyes. On her ears dangled 2 tiny, silver crosses. She was wearing tall black combat boots. Her name was Naruhi Uzumaki and she had been dealing with these whispers ever since she was young. I wonder when they will stop, she thought to herself as she walked into her class. Usually they would have stopped after a few weeks. She sat down and laid her head on her desk, waiting for the teacher to arrive. She had an average grade in all of her classes, but excelled in PE. Naruhi took a short nap but came to when she heard her teacher's voice. All right, settle down everyone. We have a new student transferring to us today. Please come in and introduce yourself, Amano-san. Naruhi's eyes locked onto the black-haired girl with violet eyes as she walked in. She was in the normal school uniform, with a slender form and large bust, at least a DD. She smiled at the class and said with a bow, "Hello, my name is Yuma Amano. Please take care of me." The males of the class either stared at her with perverted smiles or, in the case of the perverted trio Naruhi was stuck with in most of her classes, gave rather rude comments of another babe and such. The girls in class glared at her. Naruhi, rolling her eyes at her classmates for making the girl uncomfortable, gave Yuma a friendly smile. She noticed the relief that seemed to show on her face for a moment before Mr. Daizo said, "All right, settle down. Amano-san, you may take a seat in front of Uzumaki-san. Uzumaki-san, please raise your hand." Naruhi raised her hand from her seat in the back of the class. It was right next to the windows. Yuma seemed to brighten and took the seat. As the teacher began the lesson, the girl turned around and said, "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Yuma Amano." Naruhi Uzumaki, Naruhi said in a slightly surprised voice, "Nice to meet you, Amano-san. Please, call me Yuma-chan, Uzumaki-san." Naruhi, slightly smiling, said, "All right, but you have to call me Naruhi-san." "All right, Naru-chan," Yuma said in a happy voice before turning back to Daizo-sensei. As the students around them whispered, Naruhi thought, "Please let this friendship last." "Are you sure about this, Yu-chan?" Naruhi asked her friend worriedly. "You know he's a pervert, right?" Naruhi was trying to talk her friend out of going on a date with Issei Hyodo. He and his group of perverts had been on the receiving end of many of her beatings, which also spread rumors of her being a delinquent. While she could tell Issei was not as perverted as his friends, she still didn't want to see her friend hurt. "I know, but he's kinda cute," Yuma said with a blush. Naruhi sighed. "All right, but promise me not to get your hopes up. I don't want to see you hurt." Yuma smiled and hugged the girl. Naruhi, not used to being hugged even after being friends with the girl for the last month, squirmed uncomfortably. "Thank you, Naru-chan. I'll come by later tonight to tell you how it went, okay?" "Okay," Naruhi said as her watch beeped. "Oh no, I'm going to be late." "Bye, Yuma-chan." After a quick thought, Naruhi gave Yuma a hug and a kiss on the cheek, before rushing to her vehicle. Her ride was a black Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 Voyager. After putting on her helmet, she sped down the road to get to her job on time. "Chicken ramen for table 3, Naruhi said, handing a bowl to a waitress. Naruhi rolled up her smock and looked at the clock. 6:03. Her shift had ended. Yuma's date won't be down for another 2 hours, she muttered to herself as she left the ramen restaurant. She had been working her ever since she was old enough to. "I guess I can go visit the kids at the orphanage," she muttered to herself again as she bumped into someone. She rubbed her head and looked at the person she had bumped into, who was still standing. It was a woman with a pink and white dress with bat wings. "Sorry for bumping into ma'am," Naruhi said as an apology. The woman waved her off before offering her a sheet of paper. Naruhi raised an eyebrow at the sheet and noticed the orc symbol at the bottom corner. So they even hire people for their club, Naruhi thought. Thank you. With that, Naruhi hopped onto her cycle again before heading to the local orphanage. She had lived there for the first 7 years of her life before a woman found her and revealed her heritage. Her brother would then fight for her right to her clan's funds and home. She had since donated to the orphanage and helped it get on stable ground. I should get Harriet Oba-san to drive the kids over to the compound for another day with horses, Naruhi thought. Naruhi was taking a walk through the park, enjoying the night before she would return to her home. Yuma still had an hour left for her date, so a quick walk should be fine. As she was walking though, she noticed the air in front of her seemed distorted. What the hell, Naruhi thought as she touched the area and saw her hand seem to disappear the further she reached in. Taking a deep breath, she walked through it, and gaped at what she saw. She saw Issei and Yuma by the water fountain, but Yuma looked different. She was taller, her eyes darker, and had 2 jet black feathered wings coming out off her back. She was also wearing clothing that made her blush. She had currently stabbed Issei with a strange glowing spear. Yuma's, a fallen angel, Naruhi thought when heard a voice say from behind her, "You shouldn't be here, human." Before Naruhi could turn around, a spear sprouted from her chest. She screamed as pain racked her body, drawing the attention of Yuma. Naruhi, even with her vision blurring around her eyes, saw Yuma's eyes widen in shock before tears sprang to her eyes and she flew over to her. Naruhi fell and felt herself be caught. "Damn it," Yuma said from above her, cradling her head, "why were you here? You weren't supposed to see that." "Damn it." Naruhi couldn't move and just stared at her first friend with confused eyes. Why was she crying? She was using her right to keep up an image at school to kill Issei, right? Before she could ask these questions, the man who had stabbed her spoke up, "We need." Yuma swiped at the man with a sword made out of light, scratching the man's face. Before she could attack him further, there was a glow from where Issei was. The man took off and Yuma followed after with a soft, "I'm sorry." Naruhi felt less and less, her vision going dark. She heard some people running over to her and one of them asked, "What is Uzumaki-senpai doing here?" "Bucko, are you going to revive her?" another asked. "Yes. There's something inside her," a familiar voice spoke. Naruhi didn't hear what was spoken, but before she lost consciousness, she wondered why Rias Gremory was in the park. How could you let yourself be killed like that? Naruhi shot up in bed, clutching her chest. She noticed she was in her room. It wasn't that grand, but was large because it was the master bedroom. Her dresser was to the right of her bed along with a walk-in closet and bathroom. To the left was a desk, nightstand, and bookshelf. The walls were black with dark red carpeting. She was laying on a king-sized tatami mattress, her purple sheets pulled up to her chin. "Just a dream," Naruhi whispered to herself. "After all, I think it was strange I just didn't change, so it was definitely a nightmare. Who's in my bed and why am I naked?" Naruhi looked at the small lump that was under the sheet right next to her. Looking down at herself, she noticed she still had on her boxers she wore. She reached out to the blanket over the lump and pulled it down. Her mind then shut down as she tried to process what she was seeing in front of her. Kaneko Taju, the school's mascot, was sleeping next to her, naked except for a pair of panties. Naruhi's blush from her dream returned and increased dramatically. She leapt out of bed with a scream, which resulted in Kaneko waking up. She rolled over and stretched like a cat before sitting up and turning a blank stare toward Naruhi, who was pulling on her clothes. Kaneko was silent before asking, "Do you have any food?" Naruhi froze before snapping in anger, "Now, what are you doing in my house?" "Bucko told me to heal you." "Who's Bucko and what do you mean heal me?" "Rias Gremory and you had died last night." Naruhi froze and slowly slid to the carpeted floor, her back against the door to her walk-in closet. She slowly brought her legs up and wrapped her arms around them. So it wasn't a dream. No. Bucko used one of her mutated pawn pieces. Kaneko then went on to explain the whole now being a devil and peerage thing to Naruhi. Naruhi kept asking questions and they transferred their conversation around the house. It was large, being 3 stories, the house designed to look like a red and black miniature palace. The 3rd floor contained the master bedroom, 2 spare bedrooms, an office space, another restroom, and a hatch to the attic. The second story had a restroom and 9 other bedrooms. It was a large living room with a long couch and 2 love seats. There was a giant flat screen and multiple movies on a bookcase beside it. The dining room was connected to it, with a metal door leading to the kitchen. There was a waiting area, which was like a smaller living room without a TV. There was a restroom, a laundry room, and a small indoor dojo on the bottom floor, along with a door under the stairs to the basement. Alright, so Rias should call me an Issei when she's ready to talk to us? Naruhi asked Kaneko. The girl nodded, before holding out her plate for thirds. Naruhi rolled her eyes before giving her more. Alright, just leave the plate and chopsticks by the sink, Naruhi said. I need to clear my head. She left Kaneko, gently closing the door behind her. The devil looked after her before finishing the leftovers. After she was done, she walked outside and looked around the clan grounds. It was much larger than Akino's home. She knew behind house were 3 buildings, one to the left of the house a private hot spring, the middle one was for honoring ancestors, and the last one to the right was behind a lot of trees, made to be hidden. She also sensed it was heavily warded against intrusion. The backyard itself had a pond and a clear area for outside spars. The front yard, however, was the largest area. To the immediate right was a shed for tools and Naruhi's motorcycles, and the left was what looked like an old smithing area. But divided by a road to the compound's walled-off exit were large corrals for horses. Naruhi was currently barebacking a black thoroughbred, leaning down to whisper in its ear. Kaneko watched for a moment before she began walking out of the compound. As she passed, a lot of the horses came up to the fences and began sniffing at her. Kaneko, having looked up types of horses for a project, noticed there were mostly standardbreds in Appaloosa. So now I'm a devil, Naruhi said to Izanami with her wings and tail out, who snorted. Yeah, I wonder how she's going to take it also. Another snort. So you don't think Yuma-chan was lying to me about being my friend? I'll find out for sure when I see her again. Hey, don't get on me for being caught off guard. Stupid horse. Izanami laughed, however horses laugh. Naruhi wondered how she could lose an argument to a horse. Excuse me, Daizo-sensei, a male voice spoke up, drawing everyone's attention. Naruhi scowled at who she saw. Kiba Yuto. She didn't like him. He basically had the whole female school population after him for one. She had once tried to ask him for directions but had turned her down because he thought she was trying to ask for a date. She thought he was full of himself. So after the 10th try, she never tried to be near him if she could help it. Bucko needs Uzumaki-san in the clubroom. The school console oaked it. Daizo nodded with a wave. Naruhi stood up and walked past Kiba as he held open the door. She stopped just outside and waited a moment. In that time she noticed Issei was staring at her and the gaze beginning to go down. What are you looking at, Hyodo? She slightly snarled at him, eyes in her beat-down glare. It had the effect she wanted, making him look away with a slightly high-pitched nothing. Alright, follow me, Kiba said as he started walking away. Naruhi and Issei walked side by side, a good 4 feet between them. After few minutes, in which they had gotten to the forest, Issei asked, so did Yuma kill you too? Naruhi noticed Kiba leaning his head ever so slightly to hear her answer. No, a male fallen angel did. I honestly don't know what to think right now about her. Issei nodded, knowing Naruhi had been best friends with her. So why aren't you trying to get Kiba-san to accept a date proposal from you? Naruhi turned to give him a death glare from a sudden very pale green eye, her other eye closed, peering from over her sunglasses. Kaba thought the eyes looked like a picture of the evil eye. 1. I don't like him, Naruhi said. Those times I was asking him for dates, I was asking for directions, which he never let me finish. 2. I like females. With that she turned forward and asked, so your clubhouse is a Victorian-style mansion? I like it. Looking at the building, Naruhi thought that the house was too large to be used as a clubhouse. Maybe it doubled as a home? Shaking her head, Naruhi flipped up her sunglasses as they walked inside. She looked around the hallways and was honestly thinking her suspicions of the building doubling as a home was correct. Kiba led them to a room on the top floor. Naruhi sighed before looking around. She spotted Kaneko and blushed while looking away from her. Kiba and Issei put it together and Issei decided to open his mouth. Wait, did you see Taju-san na? Issei trailed off as when he saw a Hanya mask form behind Naruhi as she glared at him. Never mind. Issei promptly went back to imagination land with the girls in the room, excluding Naruhi as the mask seemed to form every time the thought of her tried to worm its way into his subconscious. She walked over and took a seat next to Kaneko, who glanced at her before returning to her chocolate. She glanced up as a buxom redhead with blue-green eyes came out of the shower in the school uniform. Standing next to her was a girl with long black hair in a ponytail and purple eyes. Rias Gremory and Akeno Himejima, the great ladies of Kuo Academy. We welcome you to the Occult Research Club, Rias said to them as they were now seated. Naruhi was between both Akeno and Kaneko, while Issei sat next to Kiba. But the club is just a front, it's more of a hobby. What do you mean? Issei asked. Naruhi wondered if he was too distracted by boobs to wonder what Rias really did with the club. We are devils, Rias said, the two yesterday were fallen angels. Angels are in the service of God and those who possess corrupt emotions and thoughts are cast out of heaven and into the underworld. They are attempting to wipe us devils out while manipulating humans. Naruhi felt pain grip her heart. Since ancient times they have fought for supremacy there, in what humans call hell. Then there are the other angels who have not fallen that come on the orders of God to exterminate devils. In other words, a three-way standoff. Naruhi looked at Issei and was confused at what his face was trying to convey. Was it going in one ear and out the other, or was he just unable to make a proper face now that he knew he was now part of a three-way standoff? Do you understand all of this? Rias asked. Yes, Naruhi said with disinterest. She had a feeling she would have to be quitting her job soon. It's kind of hard to take in, Issei said. Naruhi looked at him and nodded. Makes sense as it was his first time to be introduced to the supernatural. Yuma Amano, Rias suddenly stated, making both previous humans flinch. Naruhi's more concealed, you haven't forgotten her, right? You did go on a date with her. Naruhi looked away while gripping the front of her skirt. Issei was about to leave when Rias threw down a picture, containing Yuma and Issei. Naruhi looked at the picture once before tightening her hands again. She really didn't want to look at her face while trying to figure out her feelings toward the girl. She stayed silent as Rias spoke. She looked down at her phone and powered it up to look at the screensaver. It was her and Yumi with Izanami between them. She powered it off and wondered why she didn't bother erasing her own items of her existence. She killed you both because of the sacred gears inside both of you, Rias said. Actually, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, Gremory-san. And her male accomplice killed me, not her. Rias paid her a glance before saying, either way, you were killed. Now Issei-kun, raise your left arm and imagine what you feel is the strongest. You too, Naruhi-chan. Issei was saying focus on drawing power while Naruhi looked at her arm. I'll show mine when Issei shows his, Naruhi said after a moment, right as he failed. I guess it's still hard for you, Rias said, while shooting Naruhi a pointed look. Naruhi ignored it but was once again prevented from thinking more as Rias pulled out a card to answer Issei's question. So that's how she got to him so fast. In a way, you summoning me saved Naruhi's life, so I guess Naruhi owes you a life debt, Issei-kun, Rias said in a happy way. Okay, she either has done research on the clan or she can just read people really well. I hope it's the latter, Naruhi thought. Naruhi glanced at Issei, who seemed to be getting perverted thoughts and groping motions. Hyodo, I will spare you from the Kendo Club 2 times to repay the debt. If you don't take this offer I will make your life hell. Issei needed only that to say, yes, ma'am. Now how am I alive again? Issei, you and Naruhi have been reborn into the house of Rias Gremory as my devil servants, Rias said. The older members of the group stood up and let their devil wings out. Naruhi let her own out as they tried to bust a hole in her clothes, along with the tail. Her wings were more bony, having ridges and the membrane between the fingers was almost transparent. Issei stumbled forward as his own came out. Naruhi looked at the stacks of paper Rias pulled out. It was more flyers. We usually have familiars do this, but as beginning servants you have to start out handing them out. Do a good job and you may get to have servants yourselves. Naruhi tuned out Issei's obviously perverted talk. She wondered how Rias could stand it when it clicked. She's a full-born devil. She's been exposed to this behavior since she was a baby. I want you both to go and deliver these now, Rias said, as your first task as my servants. Naruhi took a bundle and nodded to Rias before walking out. Geez, this was going to be a long day. That was actually easier than I thought. Naruhi thought as she was now in her casual clothes. She was not going to be stuck in that uniform all day. She was now wearing black leather biker shorts and red top that showed a little of her midriff, all of which she had stored in the compartment seat on her bike. People, mainly males, had flocked to get a flyer. So now she was walking into the office once again. She slapped her palm to her face when she saw that Rias was in a towel. Why does this girl take so many baths, and why is she not even a little creeped out by Issei's stare? Ah, I have one more job for both of you. Kaneko and Akeno both have 2 jobs. Naruhi, I want you to take one of Akeno's, and Issei, you can take one of Kaneko's. Naruhi wondered what that slight smirk she was giving Issei was for. Oh well, she'd find out later. Akeno came out and she and Kaneko made 2 magic circles in similar design. The 2 newbies admired them all when Rias said, "Okay, you two, give me your left hands." Rias then drew a symbol on their palms, signaling them as members of the Gremory house. It reminded Naruhi of the tattoo she had of the Uzumaki spiral on the small of her back. Maybe this won't be so bad. She watched as Issei started to glow as he took Kaneko's place. And laughed as the circle disappeared, but he remained. It seems you'll be taking your bike to the client's house. Ah man, Issei said before his eyes lit up and looked to Naruhi. Hey, as payment for the life debt, can you let me borrow your motorcycle, Naru-chan? The candle seemed to darken as Naruhi gave Issei a sweet smile. Rising out of her shadow was the Hanya mask. Listen to me, Issei Hyodo, Naruhi said. Do not call me Naru-chan. Do not touch my bike unless you are moving it away from being destroyed or damaged. Otherwise, the Hanya licked its lips. Bad things will happen, understand? Yes, Issei squeaked. The others around her had backed away a little, though Akeno had an aroused expression. Naruhi lost the mask and said, "Good. Now I'll be going." She stood in the circle and waved at the group as she disappeared. She reappeared a moment later in front of 2 adults that looked ready to go on a date night. "Hello, I'm Naruhi. I'll be filling in for Akeno for the evening." "Oh good, we need a babysitter and the one we hired hung up on us last minute," the woman said. "Make sure they're in bed by 9 o'clock please." "No problem ma'am," Naruhi said as the 2 left the house. Naruhi sighed happily as she soaked in her onsen. After the couple had gotten back at around 12 o'clock, she had then tapped the symbol on her hand to go back to the clubroom. After giving Rias the pact for safekeeping, she left the building and drove home. She had brought in the horses for the night and then went straight to the onsen to relax. 3 9-year-olds are tiring. She heard 2 feet land behind her and she froze. A voice she was very familiar with even if it was deeper spoke, "Hello, Naruhi-chan." Naruhi didn't turn around. "Why are you here?" "I was coming here to make sure the horses were still alive," Yuma said. "Izanami would kill me if I didn't. And I came to see you." Naruhi refused to turn around, causing Yuma to walk up until she was right behind the girl. "Naru-chan, please, look at me." Maybe it was the sound of her voice, her own need to know, or Izanami's damn words, that made Naruhi turn around. She was left a little speechless for a moment at how mature Yuma now looked. The outfit was still there and up close it caused Naruhi to blush. However, she got it under control and looked Yuma in her eyes. Yuma herself gasped at the eyes her friend now had 2 flames where her pupils should be. The rest of the eye was empty, making it look like the sockets of a skull, which was pretty gross on a human face. "You're going to answer me truthfully, Yumi," Naruhi stated in an even tone. Yumi nodded. "Is your real name Yumi Amano?" "No, it's Rainier. Was your plan from the beginning to infiltrate the school to develop a good sitting before you moved on Issei Hyodo?" "Yes." Rainier noticed the girl clenched her fists tightly as she spoke the last question in an even voice. "Were you ever truly my friend?" Rainier's eyes widened before she said, "Yes. I admit during the first few days it was just for the story, but after that, I really thought of you as my friend. I never meant for you to die. Please, please believe me." Naruhi's eyes faded back to their usual green, but they were now much darker and full of tears. Rainier reached out and hugged the girl to her chest as she cried. "I was so scared that you were not my friend. That you were using me like so many others. Please, please don't scare me like that again." Rainier rubbed her back soothingly. They stayed like that for a while, with Rainier magically losing her clothes to get into the onsen. It was much warmer in there anyway. "So, does this make us enemies?" Naruhi asked. "Now that I'm a devil?" "No," Rainier said confidently. We just have to be selective on who knows. Okay. Tell you what, I'll bring my friend from Europe over here in a few days. She is coming in tomorrow and I want you to meet the girl that saved my life. You'll like her. Naruhi smiled before saying, okay. Damn it, Izanami is so going to say I told you so. Why's that? She said you were a real friend. She'll never let me hear the end of it until I give her an extra sugar cube for the week. Rainier burst out laughing. Naruhi grumbled before she also smiled. She kept her friend. Now all she had to do was keep her a secret from her new master. Naruhi looked at the clock in the club room as Rias talked to Issei about the importance of staying away from churches. Issei was nodding before he said, wait, then how come Naruhi-san isn't affect? She's wearing 2 silver crosses. These were on me as I was changed, so I guess they are now considered corrupted. Naruhi placed a slightly false lie. Yes, they were on her. No, they weren't corrupted. Her power protected her from the weakness of devils, like light and church items, while also any item of the like on her person was negated, so having a cross on her wouldn't give her fellow devils any pain. Rias said, not quite believe her, but she let it slide. After she became Naruhi's friend, the girl would open up to others. For now, it was about building trust between her and the peerage for the socially stunted teen. Rias Bucco, Akeno said, walking into the room, we received word from the Archduke that a stray devil has been spotted in town. Rias's eyes narrowed. So what's a stray devil? Issei asked Kiba. A stray devil is a devil that has abandoned its master or has killed its master, Kiba answered. So they're like us but decided they didn't like someone bossing them around when they're the superior ones? Naruhi filled in. Kiba chuckled nervously but nodded. Yes, Rias interrupted, and the reports lead us right here to this abandoned building. Our orders are to put the stray down. As they entered, Kiba said, without a master and using their devil powers without restraint always causes an ugly outcome. Rias then spoke to the 2 newbies about chess. Naruhi wondered how these pieces affect reincarnated devils while Issei was slightly confused. It's here, Kaneko said. Everyone got into a ready position, Naruhi even reaching for the inside of her jacket. I smell something unpleasant, a female voice echoed around the room, but I smell something delicious as well. I wonder if it's sweet. I wonder if it's bitter. From around a pillar came the upper body of a woman with black hair and large breasts that were displayed for all the world to see in lust-filled gray eyes. Naruhi's eyes narrowed as she slowly tightened her grip on the object in her jacket. Stray devil visor, Rias said, you unfaithful wretch, running away from your master and into the wilds to fulfill your lust. Your sins are worthy of 1,000 deaths. In the name of Marquis of Gremory, I am going to blow you away. What kind of saying is that? Naruhi thought to herself. Insolent little girl, would you like me to stain your body with fresh blood to match your crimson hair? Naruhi thought that if the girl massaging her boobs thought it was a good distraction, then it certainly was if she was dealing with men and some women who would be too confused on what to do. The smaller the fire, larger their cracks, Rias said, making Naruhi giggle. This eye is a stray devil? Issei questioned before his face made the famous perverted look. She just looks like an exhibitionist woman to me. The woman lifted up her leg with a large hand for a foot, with red claws as Kiba said. Like we said earlier, her body and soul turned real ugly. That's an understatement, Naruhi said, looking at the ribcage-like torso she had for a lower body with the giant arms for legs. And minotaur-like body. She also tuned out Issei's perverted comment. No, she was starting to be able to time his perverted talking so wasn't completely blocking him out anymore. Damn it, are those magic circles? Issei asked, looking at the woman's nipples. This made Naruhi look at the breasts and see that the woman's nipples were elongating and looked more like little gun barrels. Shit. Naruhi tackled Issei to the ground as yellow orbs moved past their heads. Don't let your guard down, Rias commanded. Yuto. Right, Yuto said before vanishing. Whoa, Naruhi and Issei said together. He's moving too fast for you to see, Rias said. I can see him, barely, Naruhi thought. Yuto's role is the knight. His attribute is speed and his ultimate weapon is the sword. Kaneko stepped forward. Looking eyes on her form, the monster opened up her torso mouth, making Naruhi want to spit out her lunch, and lunged at Kaneko. Swallowed her. It's all right, Rias reassured the two. Right as Kaneko was seen forcefully opening the mouth of the beast. Kaneko is my rook. Her attribute is simple. A ridiculous amount of strength and defense. That won't even put a dent in her. Down you go, Kaneko said in monotone as she punched through the stray's teeth and sending her flying into a pillar. Note to self, don't arm wrestle with Kaneko, Naruhi thought. Akeno, Rias trailed off. Yes, bucko, Akeno said as she walked up to the prone form of the stray. Era, what am I to do about this? As Akeno was walking away, a large hand came out of the rubble and started coming for Rias. Issei jumped up with activating his sacred gear and punching the hand away, pushing Rias aside. Thank you, Rias said in a slightly stunned voice. No problem. My body moved on its own, Issei said. Rias glanced at Naruhi to find she had drawn out what was in her jacket. It was an old Smith & Wesson Model 3, engraved with 19th century patterns. Naruhi slowly put the gun down as to not aim it at Issei. Rias stood up and walked so she was in front of Issei. Akeno, finish her off. You're naughty little thing, Akeno said, for trying to lay a hat on Bucko. You must be punished. She is my queen, my unbeatable vice president, who possesses all the attributes of the other pieces. Oh, you still seem quite active. Well then, how about this? She then proceeded to shock the ever-loving shit out of the stray. Her specialty is attacks with magical power, Rias said, ignoring the look of surprise and fear in the eyes of Naruhi and Issei. What's more, she is. Oh, my, you're still up and around. The ultimate sadist, Rias finished. Naruhi made note to be wary of the girl near things that could be used in BDSM. She was keeping her choker though. I wonder how much you can take, Akeno said in an aroused voice. Shush, she's laughing, Issei said, making Naruhi nod. Akeno, that's enough, Rias said. Done already? That's kind of a shame, huh? Akeno asked with a blush. Rias walked toward the downed stray. And after receiving its last words, used a red-black energy to obliterate it. So what pieces did you use on me, Imenas? Issei asked after feeling Naruhi start to glare at him. My pawns, Rias said simply. Pawns, you mean? Issei trailed off. Foot soldier, I can dig it, Naruhi said after a moment of thought. You mean I'm the very lowest piece? So when I become a high-ranking devil I get my own set of evil pieces? Naruhi questioned. She grinned, I can expand my family faster then. Naruhi was currently driving to away from client's home. It was the same couple, who just wanted to hire her again after their kids told them she was so amazing. It was as she passed by a house that she stopped. She looked and saw a barrier. Narrowing her eyes, she got off her bike and walked through it. She smelled blood and felt something stir inside of her. She ignored it for now, the change wasn't necessary. She entered and saw Issei punch a guy who looked like he had been molesting the blonde nun. She looks so innocent, Naruhi noted, looking at the girl from the shadows. She watched as the peerage appeared. She stayed in the shadows for a moment until having seen the man start to beat on the girl. So she stepped out of the light, drawing everyone's attention except for the man beating on the girl. And shot him 6 times at his legs where his tendons were so he couldn't run. The man screamed in pain as he fell over, smoke rolling from the wounds and smell of burned flesh permeated the air. I hate fuckers that beat on a cute girl, she said lazily, reloading her gun. You bitch, the man yelled and tried to point his gun at her only to have it fired out of his hand. You wait too late to try and top me in a gunfight. Anyway, Rias-san, said Devil allowed a moment of quick cheer that she was now being addressed by name. What is that portal thing? Fallen angels approaching, Kaneko said. Rias nodded and said, okay, Akeno prepare a portal, Kaneko grab Issei. The devils moved to do that and Naruhi looked sadly at the nun. Issei seemed very desperate to take her with them. She looked at the man who seemed to be laughing at their plight. She casually raised her pistol and aimed it at him. Her expression was blank. I judge you, guilty, was all she said as she fired. The man laughed and rolled, the bullet only grazed his arm. His laughter turned into screams of pain as fire engulfed his right side. Naruhi grinned sadistically as she whistled. The sound of a motorcycle speeding away was the last thing they heard, except for Issei as he could hear only Asia. Calm on Issei, cheer up. Naruhi was trying to cheer Issei up. Why? Because he seemed bumped out about the nun, who she learned was named Asia. They were currently in the park. Issei-san? Gunslinger-san? Both devils turned around and saw Asia, standing in front of them with an uncertain smile. Asia? Issei asked in a slightly happy tone. I need a burger, Naruhi mumbled. One quick stop later and they were at a local burger joint. Naruhi was sitting next to Asia, devouring her burger and fries. Asia stared at her with wide eyes. I never knew people could eat like that. It's amazing. She then took a tentative bite out of her own burger, using her hands. You're so adorable, Naruhi said, hugging the poor girl tightly. Yeah, but never mind that. What were you doing in the park? Issei asked. Naruhi noticed how the girl hesitated before saying, I had some time off so I thought I'd walk around town. And, I saw you, and Naruhi-san, and I, well. Asia, Issei interrupted, why don't we have lots of fun together for today? Yeah, it could be fun, Naruhi said. She had noticed something when it came to this nun and Issei. Issei acted the most gentlemanly she had ever seen him. She was so milking this for all it's worth. Plus, she would get to know her friend's savior, as a quick text confirmed her name was Asia. Asia blushed before saying, okay. So they went to the arcade. You can do it, Asia. Both devils cheered as she tried to win the racing game. She did not win. They then went over to a DDR machine and were absolutely stunned as she completely demolished them. They all then took a picture together as a group, with Asia in the middle. Look, Issei, Naruhi whispered as Asia stopped in front of a Rachu claw machine. After a single dollar, Issei handed a Rachu over to Asia. Naruhi was off to the side with her jaw on the ground. The first fucking try. Hey Issei, could you get me one? Issei took a moment to look at the currently blushing girl and smiled, sure. 1 minute later and Asia and Naruhi had matching dolls. The girls giggled to each other and thanked Issei. As they walked outside and Issei got a drink, Asia noticed his flinch. Is it from your wound? She asked him. A few minutes later they were alone at a park's large man-made pond. Naruhi watched as Asia raised glowing green hands over Issei's arm and leg. She giggled as Issei made a slight fool of himself in front of Asia with his stretches, in her opinion anyway. After a while of sitting in silence, Asia began to speak. When I was born I was abandoned by my parents. They left me in front of church in a small rural town in Europe, where I was told I was found crying. That's where I was raised. When I was 8, a puppy had been injured, and had been near death, wandered into the church. I prayed by myself as hard as I could, and when I did, a miracle happened. I was immediately taken to a larger church and told to heal the sickness and injuries of the believers who would visit from all over the world. I was really happy that my powers were helpful to other people. But one day I encountered a man who was hurt and had collapsed. However, by chancing upon him, they said anyone who had the power to heal devils heretic, and they kicked me out of the church. Even before that I had found a fallen angel and healed her. She helped me out a lot. But I have not forgotten my prayers to God, nor my gratitude. Moreover, I can't believe the awful things they all do. I'm sure this is a trial from the Lord. If I overcome this trial, someday, the Lord will fulfill my dream. Your dream? Issei asked. To have lots of friends, and she started listing the things normal people do with each other. Naruhi frowned and wondered why Rainier hadn't responded back yet. You see, I don't have any friends. Naruhi wondered how much time Rainier had to spare for her. She crouched down so her eyes were level with Asia's, which wasn't a lot as she was only 4.10 feet in height. I'll be your friend Asia, Issei and Naruhi said at the same time. I mean, we're already friends, right? Issei continued. We've hung out and chatted, right? Though we haven't gotten books together or flowers. There's no problem with that, is there? Asia looked about ready to cry at the moment as she shook her head no, mumbling the word too. Doesn't matter what we are, Naruhi said as she threw an arm. Asia, friends are friends. I'm so glad, Asia said. I'm afraid not, a male voice said. They all turned to the voice and saw it was a man in a pale gray trench coat over a white dress shirt with a matching ascot, black pants and shoes, a pair of black gloves, and a black fedora. He also had 2 sets of wings, making Issei look at him in shock. The man who killed me, Naruhi said as she looked at the man. Lord Donasek, Asia said. You cannot run away, Asia, Donasek said. No, I don't want to go back to any place where people are hurt. She turned to Issei. I'm sorry. The truth is I ran away from that church. We kinda already figured, Naruhi deadpanned, you're a horrible liar. Plus, there's no way you'd be with these low-lifes. What do you want, fallen angel? Issei yelled. Don't speak to me so casually, devil scum, Donasek said. Just hand over Asia and you'll live. I don't think so, Issei said, sacred gear. Naruhi pulled out her pistol, again cursing the fact she didn't have her shotgun. Donasek laughed, a twice critical and an outdated gun? That's hilarious. I guess the higher-ups were wrong about you having a special gun isn't even worth mentioning. I'll show you, Issei yelled as he activated his gear. Naruhi sensed his energy double and was saddened as it still wasn't enough to match the man's. Hopefully she could get in a shot before he got away. Then faster than she could see a light spear pierced Issei. She managed to avoid a skewering but her leg was caught. She fell down and grabbed her leg, which was already healing. Bought damn time. She saw Asia healing Issei. However, as soon as she was finished, the fallen angel was above them and ready to smash a light spear into Issei. The pushed Asia back as the explosion from the spear forced them into the pond. They turned back around to see Donasek with Asia in his grasps. Bye-bye, Issei-kun, Naruhi-chan, was all she said as they vanished. Naruhi was busy punching at how long she had stood up in her backyard. It was late and she couldn't get the anger out of her system. Damn it, she said, I don't even know where she is to go and rescue her. Damn it, Rias had refused to let her go after her friend. She had left early as to not start a fight as she didn't want that power of destruction turned on her. She didn't even know if the church was the Protestant one or the Catholic one. Before she could beat on the log anymore she heard a loud, help. She turned to look at the sky and gasped. Flying toward her was what looked like a blonde lowly fallen angel. But her cargo was what concerned her. Rainier, she whispered to herself as the fallen angel landed. Who are you and what happened? The blue-eyed girl said. Calawarner and Donasek were mad that Rainier helped Asia escape. He was going to kill her before I grabbed her. She told me to bring her here. Naruhi sighed before saying, follow me. An hour later and they were inside the living room, Rainier laying on the couch with bandages around her arms. So Donasek has been secretly working with a group of rogue fallen angels and seeks to be led in their good graces by gaining twilight healing, Naruhi said, making Middle nod her head, and you and Rainier were forced to go along with it because you are not as strong as him and he would have killed you both before you got word to your leaders. Another nod. Naruhi's hair shadowed her eyes before she stood up. I'm going out. Which church was it? Middle looked at Naruhi and paled at the feeling she was giving off. The one on the hill. Catholic. Naruhi whispered as she walked out into the hallway. Your friend is Scary Ray-chan, Middle said after a few minutes. Outside, a slowly smoking Naruhi opened her garage doors and grabbed her Winchester 1886, engravings like those on her pistol. She grabbed a chain and wrapped it around her shoulders. She came out a moment later and walked up to Izanami, who was staring at her. Looking up, a slightly insane grin crossed her face as she looked in her horse's eyes. Wanna hunt some fallen angels? Rias glared at the fallen angels that were insulting her servants. Specifically the blue-haired bitch named Calawarner. Just as she was going to show them her true power, a deep voice rang out, all off you, guilty. The fallen angels were then shot by what looked like bullets of fire before bursting into cinders. Calawarner made to get away but Rias blasted her. She and her queen turned around to see something that nearly made them try and attack what was approaching them. It was a skeleton horse, currently on fire. Its black bones gleamed in the light and they could feel the heat from here. Hello Rias-chan, Akano-chan, both heard and the two looked at the horse's rider. Naruhi smiled at them, her skin slightly smoking and the rifle in her hand was glowing red hot at its tip. Say hello to my horse, Izanami-chan. Isn't she beautiful? Well, I need to get to the church. I have a fallen angel to kill. She then clicked her heels and Izanami shot forward. Izanami busted down the doors right as Issei punched Donasek through a window. Before he could be lost from sight, a chain wrapped around his ankle before pulling him back inside. Issei turned and nearly freaked when he saw Naruhi hopping down from a flaming skeleton horse while holding a glowing hot chain, which now held Donasek captive. Hello, ugly bird, Naruhi said as she leaned down to be in front of Donasek. She looked at his fingers and pulled out a combat knife. Bad bird, stealing from my friend. You must be punished, yes? The peerage gathered together as Naruhi cut off the fingers of Donasek with an insane grin. What's wrong with Naruhi-san? Kiba asked. I believe it has to do with her sacred gear, Rias said. There are many sacred gears that can cause potential insanity but this is something different. Look into my eyes. The change of Naruhi's voice caused the man to look into her eyes. Everyone wondered what was happening until the man began screaming. It lasted for about a minute before Naruhi stood up, letting the man drop. The peerage stared at the fallen angel's eyes as they now looked like molten rock. Naruhi turned around and everyone noticed that her horse was now normal and that the insane light in her eyes had left. "It gets much worse than that," was all she said as she set the rings on top of Asia. She stayed silent as she watched Rias raise Asia as her bishop. After a moment of happy tears she wiped them before looking into the eyes of her master. "So guys want an explanation? Then let's go to the clubhouse." As soon as she was inside, everyone, excluding Asia and Issei who were asleep, motioned for her to begin. "My sacred gear," Naruhi began, "technically shouldn't exist. It is the sealed form of a fallen angel. It is called Ghost Rider." Naruhi yawned as she opened her eyes to the light of the sun. She grumbled and sat up. It was then she noticed her hand was stuck in something. Something soft. She slowly looked down and blushed as Rainier had her hand clutched between her breasts. "Oh, you're awake," Middle said from behind her. Naruhi turned around as best as she could and saw the lowly fallen angel was holding a tray of food. It was an Western-style breakfast, full of pancakes, sausage, eggs, hash browns, and toast. "You were so tired after checking on Rainier again you fell asleep like that," Middle continued. "I thought I could make breakfast for you as thanks." "Thank you, but how do I get my hand out of her grip?" Naruhi asked, trying to move her hand. "Damn, Rainier had a strong grip." Middle giggled. "You won't be able to. Rainier has a habit of cuddling in her sleep. Until she wakes up you're stuck like that." Naruhi nodded and began eating with her free hand. Not wanting to remain in an awkward silence, Naruhi decided to try and get to know Middle. The girl apparently was basically viewed as Rainiere's little sister and seemed to be an upbeat girl. After they finished eating, Rainier began to wake up, freeing Naruhi's hand in the process. The girl quickly moved it away and picked up both Middle's and her own plate to put in the sink. She came back to Middle and Rainier hugging each other. She smiled and waited a moment before moving closer. Rainier noticed and brightened up. "Hey Naru-chan," Rainier said in a happy voice, "thank you for healing me." "We're friends, we help each other," Naruhi said, looking away. After Rainier had finished eating, Naruhi asked, "So what happens to you guys now?" Rainier and Middle looked at each other. "Well, we can't go back to Grigori yet," Rainier said. "Azazel might have us killed for assisting Donasek and I did kill the observe-only target. And Donasek wasn't very subtle when he made us leave," Mitlet added, remembering how Donasek had basically yelled at how weak and pathetic Azazel had become before vanishing. Naruhi frowned before she tilted her head. "Did you say Grigori and Azazel?" The two fallen angels nodded and Naruhi smirked. "Well," Naruhi said, "Upu 2 can stay here for as long as you need to. But if one of my peerage members come you both need to disguise yourselves. I'll have Izanami warn you both. But if you stay here you both have to take care of the horses while I'm gone." The two nodded fast. Naruhi smiled and said, "Good, now if you excuse me. I need to make some phone calls and get through the paperwork that has built up the last few nights." Middle tilted her head and asked Rainier as Naruhi left, "Why does she have paperwork?" Rainier smiled. "She's the Uzumaki clan head and owner of Maelstrom Industries. Leading in medical and military technology, plus the biggest sponsor for multiple other businesses, hospitals, orphanages, and even from what she told me some of the supernatural organizations. She doesn't deal with much and mainly lets the board deal with everything, but she has the final say when it comes to the company's finances and area of research. So they send her proposals and updates on the money and progress of the fields being researched. She is also the one to talk to the other owners of the people she sponsors." Middle gaped and Rainier laughed at her expression. Up above, Naruhi hung up the phone with a smirk. Now that that was settled, time to deal with the paperwork. Hopefully no one was stupid enough to mess with the treasury. "Where are we going, bucko?" Issei asked Rias as they all were teleported in front of a large wall with a red swirl above the gate. "We are making sure Naruhi-chan is okay, Issei-kun," Rias said. "She didn't feel well last night." That was a slight lie. She felt fine physically. But the peerage members who had been awake for her talk on her sacred gear could tell she did not like talking about it. From what they had found out, Ghost Rider gave the person control over fire, immunity to light and holy objects, and the ability to change whatever they ride into something that looked like it was from the Hell Human's paint. It would also cause her to go slightly insane until she had given her target the penance stare, or if she had not changed in a while and found someone to judge. She had only been beginning to change from what they could see, her skin smoking, but she had not changed in a few days, so the insanity had been built up. Akeno walked up to the small intercom and pressed a button. A moment later a girl's voice asked, "Yes? May I help you?" "Yes, my name is Akeno Himejima and me and my friends are here to see Naruhi Uzumaki." "Is she in?" Akeno spoke for everyone. A moment later the gate opened as the voice said, "Naruhi will be with you in a moment. Please use the gold cart." The group walked in and took them a while even on the golf cart to get to the building. When they arrived they saw Naruhi on Izanami walking next to a child on a spotted horse. She was smiling as the child smiled and tried leading the horse. Naruhi looked up and spotted the group and waved. She led the child's horse over to who they assumed was the child's mother. After handing him to her and handing the leads to a blonde girl in a gothic Lolita dress, she came over. "Hey," she said, "what are you guys doing here?" "We were worried about you," Asia said. "You haven't been by the club for the last few days, so we came to check on you." Naruhi blinked before smiling brightly. "Thank you guys. I'm fine, I just had to catch up on some things." "Wanna come inside?" The group nodded and Naruhi led them inside after saying goodbye to her client. The devils admired the house and took seats around the living room. Naruhi pressed a button on her earpiece. "Ray-chan, can you bring out some tea?" "Enough for 7 please." A few moments later a blonde and blue-eyed woman in a white and black kimono came in and set a tray on the coffee table. She poured everyone tea before bowing and leaving. Issei stared after her until a sharp cough from Naruhi made him look back at the group. "So, have you found a place for Asia-san to live?" Naruhi asked with a knowing smirk. Rias raised her eyebrow before smiling. "Ah," Rias said, "you expected that I would put Asia in Issei's home, so you didn't offer your own home as a place for her to live." "Maybe Tilda," Naruhi said, making the two sitting next to each other blush. "I mean, they look so cute, and as Issei's peerage member I believe I should help him at least find a girl that doesn't find him disgustingly perverted." Issei slumped over in depression while Asia rubbed his back. Kiba, Akeno, and Rias laughed while Kaniko's lips twitched. "Okay, enough teasing Issei," Rias said after she stopped laughing. "Naruhi, I understand you need time to sort some things, but I need you back as soon as possible." Naruhi nodded before saying, "I've finished what caused me to miss the last few days, so I'll be back today." Rias bucko. "So don't worry." Rias smiled and stood up. The rest of the peerage filed out, with Naruhi sending the disguised Rainier a thumbs up discreetly. It had been a week since the Gremory peerage had visited and Naruhi had settled into a routine within the peerage. During school she hung out with Kaniko and had made it a challenge to herself to worm her way past the girl's stoic exterior. So far she now had gotten the girl to begin smiling at her jokes. She would spar with Kiba and had Akeno teaching her how to use the more basic of devil spells she could use, like the teleportation circle. Rias would teach her, Asia, and Issei on the workings of the supernatural world. The final thing she would do is go out with Issei and Asia to hand out flyers. She was beginning to see Issei as a brother and Asia as a little sister. She was even threatening Issei less than she usually did, though that was because she had finally paid off the life debt. "Alright, I'm ready," Asia said as she finished putting her flyers in her bag. "Alright, let's go," Issei said. "Wait," Rias spoke up, stopping the three in their tracks. "This is the last week you'll be handing out flyers." "Huh?" the three said. "I told you all earlier. I'm having you do this as one part of your training, but flyer distribution is usually the job of a familiar." "So we've graduated from flyer distribution?" Issei asked. Rias smiled. "We'll need to get you 3 your own familiars first." Rias held out her right hand and summoned a bat with a human-like face. "This is my familiar, Kai-chan. You've met her before, Issei, Naruhi, haven't you?" The bat flew forward a little and changed in a puff of smoke. Naruhi gaped as it was the woman that had handed her her own flyer the night she was killed. So she was really. Issei trailed off, looking at the woman as she changed into a bat and disappeared. Akeno said, "Let me show you mine." She pointed a finger and a green imp appeared in a magic circle. "This is Shiro," Kaniko said with a small smile. The group looked at the white kitten Kaniko was holding. "Mine is," Kiba said when Issei said, "Never mind about yours." Naruhi gained a tick mark and hit Issei on the head. She turned to Kiba. Can you please show me your familiar Yuto? Yuto smiled before summoning a small black bird with a bronze beak that had rows of small sharp teeth. It's a Stymphalian bird. The bird looked around before disappearing. Familiars are a fundamental part of being a devil, Rias said. They're used to help their masters, relay information, and even in matters of pursuit. Anyo, so how do we obtain one of these familiars? Asia asked. Well, you see, Rias said as a knock on the door came. Yes? Akeno called out. The door opened and a very familiar group came into the room, led by a familiar person. It was the student body with their president, Sona Sitri. Naruhi grumbled under her breath before looking at the group passively. Excuse us, Sona said. Wa? Issei said startled, isn't she? Who might that be? Asia whispered to Issei. Naruhi let Issei tell Asia, as she would have spoken in a not-so-positive tone. Now that she was a devil, she could sense the same dark energy of Sona. What are you doing here? Rias asked Sona politely. Both of us have just increased our number of servants, Sona said, so I thought we should exchange greeting again. Servants? Issei asked, you mean? Akeno turned to Issei. The lady's real name is Sona Sitri. She is the heir of the house of Sitri, an upper-class devil family. There are other devils at this school? Issei asked. Naruhi really wondered how much affinity he had at being a devil. Asia already had a better grasp on it than he did. Rias senpai, haven't you told him about us? A boy asked, making Naruhi's eyes narrow. He spoke again in a slightly haughty voice. I wouldn't be too sure about someone who isn't aware of his fellow devils. Saji, we do not interfere with each other's affairs, Sona said calmly, making Naruhi savor the look of letdown on Saji's face. It's only natural Hyodo wouldn't know of us. You're the one from class 2C, Issei said as he looked at Saji, who recently became a student council member as a clerk. Saji Genshiro, pawn, Sona filled in. My pawns, Hyodo Issei and Naruhi Uzumaki, and my bishop, Asia Argento, Rias gestured. Naruhi felt like Izanami when she was showing her off for the first time. You're a pawn too? Issei said, and we're even in the same year. Saji gained another, I am better than thou, expression, making Naruhi twitch a few times while squeezing her hands together. I find my pride terribly wounded to be counted the same as someone like you, a member of a trio of perverts. What the hell did you say? Oh, you want a tangle? I may have just become a devil, but appearances to the contrary, I could have become a knight or a bishop if Taiko had any left. Saji, stop that, Sona interrupted. Besides, he needed one of Rias's mutated pawns, along with Uzumaki-san. What? Unbelievable. That dweeb? Sorry about that, Hyodo, Argento, Uzumaki, Sona said turning to them as she tilted her head to the side with closed eyes and a smile. If you wouldn't mind, please accept him as your fellow devil. Saji? Naruhi watched the interaction of Saji greeting Asia and Issei. She only told him if he peeked on her again she would not hold back anymore. She ignored Rias and Sona exchanged sympathies. She turned her head as Saji mentioned getting a familiar and threw in her 2 cents. Saji baka. We were just told in getting our familiars also. Huh? Sona said in surprise. You, too? Yes, Rias said, I was thinking of going next week. But he only takes people once every month. Then what do you say we have an equitable contest of strength? Contest? Naruhi began to retreat to stand by Kaneko because of the aura Rias was projecting. Whoever wins gains the right to make their request of him. You don't mean a rating game, do you? Rias giggled, of course not. We would never get permission for that. True. Moreover, you must be extra careful with your person now, Sona said with a small smirk. Rias gained an annoyed expression. That has nothing to do with it. Let's settle this the high school way, with sports. Naruhi wondered what her master was hiding. Let them have it, bucko. Akeno-chan. Issei yelled. Saji yelled, President, win for us. One of Naruhi's eyes twitched as Issei had yelled right in her ear. A group of students had gathered to watch the 4-inside battle it out in tennis. Well, the females were, the males wanted to see some panties. I hope they can control themselves, she muttered. Devils were competitive and there was a chance they may begin using their powers. Then they would have to change everyone's memories. She moved over to stand by Kiba and Kaneko. They can't use magic like this, Kaneko commented before taking a piece of chocolate Naruhi offered her. And just like that, they began to see subtle signs of magic, beginning with the ball that moved in an impossible direction because of the way the balls was going and the ball's spin. They're using magic anyway, Kiba's sweat dropped. This could become a bit too heated, Kaneko said. No one seemed to notice the magic circle, making Naruhi wonder if the circle was somehow camouflaged to the unaware. Or if people were too distracted by panties and tits that they didn't notice. Was it wrong to believe it was the latter? So dodgeball, Naruhi said. She was currently in the gym and was stretching her legs. Since it was night and they were behind closed doors, she knew that people were going to be using their powers to win the game. Hopefully she could at least be able to dodge well enough that it didn't matter. Ah, a pained moan filled the air, making her look at Asia. She was being stretched by a Kano. She felt a little pity for the girl. That is until Issei began making a perverted face. She smiled and walked over to Kaneko after she bent him until there was a crack. "Thank you Kaneko-chan," she said to the girl. After making sure Issei could still move, they gathered together and Issei handed everyone a headband. Naruhi looked at it and smiled. It said, Occult Research Club, in kanji. "This is great Issei," Naruhi said, with the others agree. "Sorry to keep you waiting," Sona's voice rang out. Naruhi had a slightly bad feeling. Right off the back as the game began, someone used their devil's strength on her ball. It tore right through Kaneko's clothes. Naruhi dodged out of the way of incoming magic balls. She offered a sympathy wince for Issei when he was nailed in the balls. She agreed with Kaneko as she didn't know how to feel about Asia healing Issei's balls through his clothes. On one hand, he argued against her. On the other hand, he was a pervert. She settled for telling Kaneko to nail Saji and the balls. With that, time ran out and they won. "Campy." The orc cheered in the club room. Naruhi smiled as she watched Issei give Yuto a semi-compliment, but her eyes focused on Rias. She was smiling at everyone, but the way her eyes seemed a bit far off and her behavior for the last few days was bugging Naruhi. She wanted to know what was wrong. "Now we can just goof around here," Rias said. "We have to go and get your familiars." Akano prepared a magic circle as Asia asked, "We're going right now?" "Yes, we have to go right now. You can only go and visit him during a full moon," Rias said. "Who's him?" Issei asked. "The familiar master. This place is the familiar forest," Akano said. "It's full of familiars." Naruhi looked around. The place looked like something you'd see on Halloween or in a horror movie. "It sure looks like a place where anything might pop out," Issei said. "Get some," a voice rang out. Naruhi whipped out her pistol and pointed it in the direction of the voice, because she was startled. "I'm the familiar master, the Toji," a man said in what looked like clothes you'd see on a kid. Naruhi wondered, put her gun away before he noticed. No sense in killing the man who was going to give you your familiar. "Familiar, master?" Issei and Asia asked together. The moon is nice and full tonight. Perfect for getting familiars. Stick with me, and on this day, any familiar you want is yours for the taking." "He's a professional when it comes to familiars," Akano said to Issei and Asia. "Not so much with people, I bet," Naruhi thought. "So what kind of familiar do you desire?" The man asked. "A strong one? A fast one? Perhaps a poisonous one? All of the above?" Naruhi asked, getting looks from the others. Issei spoke up. "Do you have any cute familiars? Like a girl?" He ignored the glare from Naruhi. "TCH, TCH, TCH. This is why amateurs are so hopeless," the Toji said. "You should get a familiar that will be of most use to you. In other words, understand what your own abilities are and choose one that will supplement your attributes." "Anyo, I want a cute one as well," Asia said. "Okay Tilda," the man said with two circle blushes. He's a sucker for a cute face, Naruhi thought. A few minutes later they were in front of a lake. The familiar master spoke up. "This lake is filled with water spirits known as undines." "Oh, water spirits. Judging by the name, they're probably." Naruhi tuned him out and stared at the water. Her flames burned underwater, but it might not be a good idea to get a water familiar. She then saw the water begin to move and a very muscular and masculine female shot out of the water. Naruhi looked away, a bit disturbed by the clearly male appearance of the woman. She did the laugh as Issei became disgusted and almost lose his lunch. Serves his pervy ass right. They were now walking down another path when the familiar master held his hand up to stop everyone. "Look," he said, pointing at a tree branch. On it was a cute little blue dragon. "Wow, it's so cute," Asia said. "I wonder if I'm allowed to get it for Asia?" Naruhi wondered. A baby sprite dragon, the master said, the offspring of a dragon that uses blue lightning. That's a pretty high class, huh? Yuto asked. This is the first time I've ever seen one, Akeno added. If you're going to get it, do it now, the master supplied. You can't get them once they mature. Issei-kun, Akeno said, you have the power of the Red Dragon Emperor, so you should be fairly compatible. That makes sense, Issei said, making Naruhi frown. The dragon would look better with her. All right, Sprite Dragon, I choose you. What is this Pokemon? Naruhi thought. It was then green slime began to rain from the sky. As her clothes began to dissolve, Naruhi was glad they were still her school clothes. However, Naruhi's whole body caught on fire, burning away the slime before it could dissolve to much. Luckily for her, it was only her midriff that was now exposed and her shoulders. She was so glad she left her jacket at the club. Naruhi deadpanned as Issei did nothing to help the girls and in fact tried to convince Rias to let him keep it as a pet. It was then Issei and the slime were zapped by blue lightning. The Sprite Dragon? Rias asked. Slime Taro. Issei said, why, you? Issei was shocked again. Issei-kun, Asia said, moving toward him. The dragon chose that moment to land on Asia's shoulder. Those guys don't attack anyone unless they take them to be a foe, the master supplied to the unspoken question, meaning that it thinks that the boy and his slime were attacking the pretty blonde girl. How cute, Asia said, holding the dragon. That settles it. The pretty girl gets her familiar. The group made room and the familiar stood in a green circle. Asia began, the name of Asia Argento, I command thee to accept this pact to be my familiar. The glow disappeared and the dragon looked back up at Asia before flying into her arms. Okay, it's finished, Akeno said, nicely done, Asia. The dragon began to snuggle into Asia. You're tickling me, Rasei. Rasei? Issei asked. Yes. He emits Reigeki and I also borrowed from your name, Issei. Haha, well okay. Nice to meet you, Rasei. Rasei glared at Issei and shocked him. Oh, I forgot to mention this, but dragons hate males of all other creatures, the master said with a smile. I like the little guy already, Naruhi said. Now it's Tomboy's turn for a familiar. The master ignored the glare from Naruhi. The group walked along the forest track until they began to hear hissing. Everyone freeze, the master said, making everyone stop. I accidentally led on a wrong path. That hissing was a hydra. Hydras are so evil that they will kill their own masters. It has an immortal body and if a head is cut off 2 will take its place, 3 if you cut off its middle head. Come on. Everyone began to back away except for Naruhi. Before Rias could tell her to retreat, she shot into the thicker forest. Naruhi! The group yelled and were prevented from going forward by the familiar master. They argued with him about getting through when the ground began to shake. The group looked and saw 8 heads come out of the forest. Their scales were black and had red spikes running down their necks. Their heads looked like those of a rattlesnake's with 3 dark red, spiky frills, like a frilled lizard. They could see 2 rows of teeth and shiny fangs. The heads looked to be about 5.5 feet wide and over 30 feet long. The group prepared to attack when a 9th head came out of the tree line, with Naruhi on its head. Hey guys, she said as she pulled a few twigs out of her hair, meet Rei-chan. She's agreed to buy my familiar. The rest of the body came out, revealing it to be like that of a monitor lizard with 9 rows of spikes running along its back. The body was 15 feet long and the 3 tails, which ended in arrowhead tips, were 30 feet long. So how did you tame it? The familiar master asked. I just used a little magic to connect to her mind and told her that I would not cut off her heads to make her more powerful like others of her kind have had done to them. So after a quick glimpse of my power she agreed. I named her Rei because of an ability I will show you guys when we do the pact. The group gaped at her as Naruhi proceeded to make the pact. A moment later Naruhi turned around with Rei behind her as she said, disguise mode. The hydra went up in smoke and when it cleared, the group gaped. Instead of a hydra, there were 10 black Akitas with red eyes that were surrounding Naruhi. Okay, make a line everyone, first head to 9th. Rei can split up into 10 forms, 1 for each head and 1 for her body, which is the one in control in hydra form. The group watched as one of the dogs, the biggest one, went up to stand on Naruhi's right side. Naruhi then went down and with a glowing green hand marked each one with a number either on their head or one of their legs. It was painless and looked like it was part of their fur. There, now I can identify each of you when you're in this form, Naruhi said. The familiar master watched as the supposedly most evil breed of familiar rubbed their heads along Naruhi's legs. So she figured it out, he thought. Not many know of a Hydra's multiple personality or magic in general. They are a distant relative of dragons after all. Rias frowned and scolded her for a moment. You idiot. You had me worried. Next time don't go running into such a dangerous situation. She then smiled. But I'm proud of you to have gotten such a powerful familiar. Naruhi smiled and patted Rei's head. After thanking the master, the group returned to the clubhouse. Akeno spoke to Rias. I hear that sprite dragons will only open up their hearts to those pure of heart. Ordinarily, they do not give themselves over to devils, but perhaps Asia-chan's history as a sister had some influence on him. He's so cute, Naruhi gushed over the little guy as he cuddled with Asia, making Rei let out a huff. Issei though, hey, Rasei. What do you think you're doing to Asia? He said this as the dragon had been rubbing his face in her chest. This earned him another shock. Now, Rasei, you mustn't misbehave, Asia scolded the dragon. The dragon let out a yawn. Okay then, good night, Rasei. For Asia, who is my junior, to be somehow more devilish than me, Issei said, making Naruhi roll her eyes at how he just now was figuring this out, makes me feel snubbed. Damn it, before you know it, I'm going to get me a familiar that will astound you all. I have no doubts about that, Naruhi said, but it probably won't be in the way you're thinking. Well, I need to get home, I missed a whole day. Good night Rias-chan, everyone. The rest of the people filed out, saying good night to everyone. Naruhi dismissed Rei and the rest to wherever they go and hopped on her bike. She hoped she could figure out what was wrong with her bucko. She arrived in front of her house and sighed in relief. It looked like the girls had taken care of the horses. She was so glad it wasn't a school day today or tomorrow. As she opened her door she was greeted by the sight of an annoyed Rainier and Middled. Where have you been? Rainier questioned. Yeah, you have been gone all day and didn't come back home last night, Middled said. We were worried for you. Naruhi smiled and said, I was in the familiar forest. Apparently time passes differently there. But I got a new familiar that will be living with us from now on. Come on, I'll summon her outside. The two looked at the pleading eyes of Naruhi and couldn't help but nod. Smiling she led them out back and snapped her fingers. Behind her a large magic circle appeared and Rei appeared. Then in a quick flash changed into the collection of Akitas. This is Rei and her heads have their own names, Ik, Ni, San, Yan, Go, Roku, Nana, Hachi, and Q. They'll be guarding the house unless I summon one of them. Go say hi to my friends girls. Naruhi smiled as her familiars went over and began sniffing Middlet and Rainier, who hesitantly rubbed their heads before doing so more confidently. Naruhi smiled. Now she wouldn't have any more problems with intruders and she had another friend or friends. Naruhi frowned as she pulled up to the clubhouse. She was in her casual clothes as there was a meeting she had to be present for on PC for the company because one of their sponsors wanted more money. After a quick look at their background and the income they were receiving from them, she said no as they were slowly losing money in sponsoring them and completely cut them off. She then changed the rest of the money to flow into their other sponsors. But the reason for her frown was because Rias had been acting even more strange for the past few days. She entered the clubroom to find everyone already there. Except for a new woman. She had silver hair, silver eyes, and a maid outfit. Naruhi looked to Rias who shook her head. Nice to meet you, Naruhi said with a bow, Naruhi Uzumaki. Graphia Lucifuge, the woman supplied. Now, may I begin speaking, Rias-sama? Rias raised her hand and went to speak to them when a fiery magic circle appeared. Out of it stepped a man in a red tux, blonde hair, and blue eyes. He had an aura that screamed Rig Boy. HMPH, I haven't been to the human realm in a long time, he said. I've come to see you, my beloved Rias. Naruhi hated the man in that moment. Issei asked who he was. This gentleman is Lord Riser Fenix, Graphia said. He is a pure-blooded upper-class devil, the third son of the House of Fenix. And Rias-sama's betrothed. Naruhi glared at Riser as he sat next to Rias on a couch, fondling her hair and began to rub her legs. Enough of that, Rias said standing up. I have told you Riser, I am not marrying you. But Rias, I think that your family's circumstances are desperate enough to not allow you to be so inconsiderate. Rias glared at him. I do not intend to bring my house to ruin. I will marry whomever I wish. It is a matter for all devils to keep pureblood devils, whose numbers are low since the last war, from dying out. Your father and Sirzex decided on this arrangement with the future in mind. Rias turned away and Naruhi could see the hurt in her eyes. My father, my brother, and my whole clan are in too great a rush. I won't say it again, Riser. She turned around to glare at him. I will not marry you. Riser stood up and grabbed her chin. I too bear the reputation of my house. I can't have you besmirching our good name. He turned his glare on her peerage. Even if I have to incinerate all of your servants, I will take you back to the underworld with me. The two devils built up their power until Graphia said, please stop. She stepped forward and looked at them. I am here on orders of Sirzex to keep peace between you two. I will not hold back one iota. Riser let go of Rias and stepped back. When told by the one who holds the title of the ultimate queen, even I am fearful. My master anticipated this would happen. As such, he has assigned me a last resort should things break down. Last resort? Rias asked, what do you mean? If you are insistent on following through your wishes, she is to settle this with Lord Riser via rating game. Naruhi tilted her head to listen to Kiba explain what the rating game was. She was already grimacing as the idea, as Riser said, I have played the game many times and have secured almost win after win. Far from any experience. On the other hand, you have not even qualified for an official game. Only mature devils are allowed to participate in a rating game, Akeno said. That isn't our only disadvantage, Kaneko added. Rias, just to be sure, I have to ask, are these all of your servants? Riser asked. So what if they are? Rias said, glaring at Riser, who laughed and snapped his fingers. Another magic circle appeared and Naruhi frowned. 15 girls and women stood there. He had a whole peerage set. Damn it. Naruhi, however, sweat dropped as Issei cried at how Riser had accomplished his dream before him. Could the boy ever not let his penis think for him? She, however, outright growled as Riser began making out and fondling one of the women while taunting Issei. How dare he do that in front of the one he was supposed to marry? Shut up. The way things are going, after I marry the president, I'll get cozy with other ladies, too, you seed-sowing chicken bastard. Baka, Naruhi thought fondly as he spoke up, and probably earned him even more attractive points with Rias. She, however, grabbed his jacket before he could charge Riser. Issei, as much as I would love to see you pound the man into the ground, she said as she gazed at the other peerage, who looked ready to jump Issei, this is supposed to be a peaceful meeting and I don't want Graphia-san to turn you into pulp. So calm down. Issei looked back at her for a moment before nodding, deactivating boosted gear. Rias nodded to Naruhi before saying, all right. We will decide this with a rating game. Riser, I will wipe you out. I'm looking forward to it, my beloved Rias, Riser said as he went to stand with his peerage. I will see you at the game. As the magic circle caught fire, Riser began laughing like one of those villains in movies. When he was gone, Naruhi asked, when is this rating game? The game will be held in 10 days, Graphia said. 10 days? Rias asked. In light of Lord Riser and Lady Rias's experience and strengths, I wonder if there ought not be given an appropriate handicap given. The way she stated it must mean that is the max time she could give us, Naruhi thought. No, Rias said, I hate to admit it but I need the handicap. Graphia nodded and bowed before walking away a bit before disappearing. Naruhi looked at Rias and asked, why didn't you tell us, bucko? Rias sighed and sat in her chair. I thought I had until I was 18 until he would come. That was the original agreement, but as you can see, Riser is impatient. I was going to tell you all, it's just, I wanted to be able to handle it myself. Naruhi walked up to Rias and put her hand on her shoulder, making Rias look at her. We are your friends, Rias. We are here to help you. So I promise you on my honor as an Uzumaki, even if I gave to fight the whole peerage on my own, we will win you your freedom. The others began to agree and came up to put their own hands on Rias's shoulders. She looked at them with surprised eyes before smiling. Thank you. Thank you all. Now, I'm going to arrange Sona to let us take the next 10 days off. Please get a good night's rest because tomorrow starts training. Naruhi stood in front of a shrine-like building in the forested area of her property. Now that she was a devil, she could see the magic seals that surrounded it, shifted, and change. Taking a deep breath, she drew her combat knife and sliced her hand, which healed in a second. She dropped the blood on the handless door and it opened slowly inward, the seals stopping in their tracks. Nara stepped inside and closed the door. Candles of blue fire lit the room from perches inside the walls. They lit up a surprisingly long hallway. She walked forward until she reached the very end in a circular room. Above it was the design of the Uzumaki symbol in white while the floor was in black. In front of her was the normal red Uzumaki symbol. Around the room were pedestals surrounding the symbol on the floor. The first pedestal to the right was a floating dart made of mistletoe. The next was a katana with a gleaming black handle with designs of the sun on its black sheath. The one right in front of the Uzumaki symbol in red was a floating scimitar that was on fire. To the left was a katana similar to the first with a white handle with the designs of the moon on its white sheath. The last item was a spear with a black blade, silver edges, a black staff, and silver kanji for dragonfly cutter on its blade. Like the one from Token Ranbu. I don't own that either. She walked up to the katana to the right and said, I need your power, Juchi Yosamu. The blade let out an ominous black glow from its sheath. Naruhi reached out and grabbed the sheath and strapped the sword to her waist. She left the building. The seals glowed and once again resumed their march and change over the surface of the small shrine. Naruhi walked into her house as she sat down in the living room to meditate with the blade. Anyo, Middle said, gaining Naruhi's attention, what is that blade? Naruhi closed her eyes again and said, a sword of my ancestors. She didn't elaborate any more than that. Naruhi would remain in this position until an hour before she had to leave, in 6 hours. You would think that being made into a devil with amazing strength when they weren't too out of shape would make someone stronger. Naruhi deadpanned as she watched Kiba pass a struggling Issei. I guess that isn't the case. Rias sighed as Issei fell backwards and complained for one moment before getting back up again. But he's stubborn, Naruhi added before turning back around and continued up the path on the mountain. She was in a white training gi at the moment with her katana strapped to her back. Naruhi-san, Yuto said, pulling up alongside her, I didn't know you practiced swordplay. Naruhi glanced at him. I know enough to get by, but I believe if I can practice how to wield my ancestor's sword then I can give us another edge over Riser's peerage. Plus it can catch them off guard as I wasn't holding a sword when I was there. Yuto nodded in understanding, then I will help you in reaching that goal. Naruhi smiled gratefully, you know Yuto, despite the big head the girls have given you, you're alright. Yuto laughed awkwardly as they continued, stopping once in a while to grab a drink. Here we are, Rias said. Before the group was a mansion with a winding driveway around a pond. The whole property seemed to be surrounded by a forest. Sugoi, Asia exclaimed. When you finish unpacking in your rooms, meet outside, Rias said while walking through the gates, we begin training immediately. Hi, her peerage members exclaimed. About 10 minutes after showing everyone their rooms and unpacking and changing into their workout clothes, except for Naruhi, they all met outside. Yuto handed Issei a bakken, Lesson 1, Swordplay. Issei rushed Yuto and began swinging his sword randomly, trying to hit the pretty boy. Naruhi, knowing a little of swordplay, could see Issei was slightly off-balanced and open to counter-attacks. Yuto calmly blocked each flimsy strike before knocked the sword out of Issei's hands. Though Naruhi wondered if the head strike with the bakken was really necessary. You're up, Naruhi-chan, Rias said. Naruhi unstrapped Juchi Yosamu and set it against the wall of mansion. She picked up the fallen bakken and turned to face Kiba. She bowed before taking a ready stance, Yuto following. After Issei moved out of the way, she attacked. While she didn't penetrate Yuto's guard, she managed to keep up for a minute longer than Issei before the knight got in a strike to the gut. Naruhi coughed and fell down, rubbing her stomach. You need to learn to guard yourself at all times, Yuto lightly scolded before helping her up. Okay. While Issei and Naruhi train with Yuto, Rias said, Asia will practice dodging balls thrown by Kaneko and Akeno. As you healer you need to be able to move around fast and dodge incoming attacks from the enemy. Asia gained a serious expression, I'll do my best. 4 hours later, at around 12 p.m., the three newer devils stood in a room with Akeno. The only signs from their past 4 hours of hell were the scuff marks on their clothes, thanks to Asia's twilight healing. Lesson 2, Akeno said, take the magic power of the aura that surrounds your body, and stream it to a focal point. Issei was stretching out his hand like he was firing a ki blast from Dragon Ball. Naruhi juggled a ball of fire while Asia yelled out, "I did it." The three other devils looked to see her, holding a ball of green energy. Era, you might have a real talent for magic, Asia-chan. No shit, she's a bishop, Naruhi thought with a sweat drop. Akano brought out a water bottle and set it on the table in the room. She raised her hand over it and the bottle exploded outwards, the water turning into ice. Naruhi blinked in surprise. Akano had only shown her magic circles, not the actual process of using magic like this. Once you're familiar with it, you will become able to control fire, water, lightning, and so on, out of nothing at all. Asia-chan, please practice this next. Naruhi-chan, try making the water boil. Issei-kun, you keep practicing concentrating your magic power. Alright, Issei said with a sigh. Visualization is the source of magic. The most important thing is to make whatever comes to mind materialize. Naruhi hid her snort as she focused on the water bottle Akano set in front of her. The only thing Issei can focus on is his precious Oppai, she thought. And as if to prove her right, she watched as Issei tried to find a focus only to end up staring too long at Akino's cleavage. With a sigh, she turned back to her water bottle, which was slowly beginning to bubble. Maybe magic won't be so easy for me. Another 4 hours later and Naruhi thought for the first time in her life that learning how to use magic was bullshit. It caused her a headache, and if it wasn't involved with fire or magic circles, she struggled as bad as Issei. Asia however seemed to excel in all elements of magic, much to Naruhi's ire. She was still technically her senior, damn it. Anyway, Asia had been taken aside by Rias to practice dodging again and had then sent Issei and her off with Kaneko to fight in the forest. Kaneko stood in front of them in the middle of a large clearing. Lesson 3. Hand-to-hand combat. One of you will attack, the other will run laps. When completing a lap, do 20 push-ups and sit-ups. Rotate every 20 minutes. Issei first. As Naruhi ran her laps, she had to avoid a flying by Issei that was sent her way by a punch, kick, or throw from Kaneko. She had to give it to Issei, he could take a beating. But then maybe he had gained a tolerance to physical pain from all the times the kendo club had beaten him. Either way, Naruhi knew she wasn't going to fare much better than him. She didn't have any set style of fighting. Growing up in the orphanage, she had developed a brawler style of fighting, and after beginning to practice Tai Chi, she had added more of a flow-like nature to it, but in no sense of the word was it a specific fighting style. Though it had helped her knock some sense into some drunks that sometimes came by the orphanage. Rotate, Kaneko calmly said as she threw Issei at a tree besides Naruhi. The redhead grimaced and ran at Kaneko. She threw a punch, which was caught. Naruhi was then thrown over Kaneko's shoulder. Yep, Naruhi was getting her ass kicked by a girl who was even smaller than her. Finally dinner, Naruhi said as her stomach growled. After being beaten around by Kaneko for the past 4 hours, she had worked up an appetite. She began making her way to the dining room when Rias grabbed the back of her shirt. Not yet, Rias said, dragging her into the kitchen with Issei and Asia. Lesson 4. Use your magic to cook dinner. Cook dinner. Naruhi yelled at Rias. She had to agree with Issei. Rias was a fiend. As best you can, of course, Rias said happily, making Naruhi growl. Well, good luck. Naruhi looked at the items they were using. Potatoes and onions. Ah, I could really use a ramen bowl right now, she said as she used magic to boil a pot of water. Asia, you cut up some potatoes and onions. Issei, peel the onions and potatoes. She watched as Issei looked at the boiling pot and the glowing knife of magic in Asia's hand. She raised an eyebrow as he made a squeezing motion with left hand and the onion in his right peeled. Naruhi blinked as Asia cheered. No, he could have possibly used that as a focal point, did he? Issei did it again and Naruhi saw him gain a perverted, victorious gleam in his eyes as he began glancing at all the onions and potatoes. He did, she thought with a slight twitch before sighing. As long as it helped him get ahead in the rating game, she would let it slide. Hey Issei Baka, gaining his attention. He turned in surprise, coming down from his high of successfully using his magic. Asia gestured around for her. What are we supposed to do with all these? Issei nervously laughed, which earned him a ladle to the head courtesy of Naruhi. Just help Asia cut them, Baka. After an hour of waiting for all the potatoes to be done and finding some peas and carrots to add to the dish, the three brought out the large plates and bowls of potatoes. Naruhi took a seat across from Yuto and next to Akano and after a quick itadakimasu began to dig in. It wasn't ramen but magic-made food didn't taste half bad. With Issei, he was currently using his new power of X-ray vision to peek at the girls on the table. However, as he looked toward Naruhi for a quick moment, he saw an obnoxious, black, sensor bar where her tits were. Yeah, Issei thought, I'd rather not. I swear her specialty is perv sensing. Why do I feel like someone is perving right now on me? Naruhi wondered as she looked around. All she saw was Issei who was looking at Kaneko. Weird. Kaneko didn't seem to like the stares. You seem to be leering at me. Issei sputtered, and no, not at all. Ha 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 ha. Naruhi wondered if he honestly thought he was following anyone with that. Issei, Ria said, making Issei stop laughing and looked at her. What do you think, after training all day? Yes. Well, I am the weakest one. Yes, that much is certain. But Asia's healing, Naruhi's Ghost Rider, and your boosted gear are important assets. The other side will be conscious of that, as well, except for Naruhi's Ghost Rider, so I want you to gain at least enough power to get away so that you don't slow down the others on our side. We understand, Naruhi said as Issei and Asia offered their confirmation. Okay, Ria said standing up, now that supper is over, let's head for the baths. The baths, Issei said, standing up like a pillar. Naruhi narrowed her eyes at him and prayed that the baths were separate. She would not be able to stand Issei in the same tub. Issei, do you want to watch us bathing? Then would you like to join us? I don't mind, Ria said, making Naruhi gape. What kind of girl just says that to a boy she wasn't even in a relationship with? The devil kind, her sacred gear told her. Go back to sleep, Naruhi snapped at him. That was strange, he usually only woke when she changed or when she dreamed. What was with him waking up when she was still normal and awake? She was pulled back into the real world when Rias asked, Akano, you don't mind do you? Naruhi blushed in embarrassment as Akano giggled and said, I would like to wash the gentleman's back. And you Asia? Naruhi put her head in her arms as Asia nodded. Why was she a part of a group of females with little decency towards the second male of their group? Kaneko? Rias turned to the final girl. No, was the blunt statement of the white-haired loli. Naruhi praised God, even if it brought about a twinge of discomfort. Well that's that, Rias said in a state-so-fact-so voice. Issei burst into tears and slumped to the table. Hopefully the perv wouldn't find some way to peek on them. Sighed as she sunk up to her neck in the hot springs water. It was underneath the mansion and surrounded on all sides by solid rock. No peeping Issei today. Though her perv meter kept on being ticked periodically. Wonder why? Excuse me, Naruhi-chan, Rias said, making the girl turn to her master and struggled to keep her blush in check. Being by in a hot spring or a changing room sure made things difficult sometimes. Yes, Rias, Naruhi asked. Is your sword the real Juchi Yomasu, created by Muramasa? Naruhi raised an eyebrow at how Rias's eyes were shining. Rias-chan is a very big fan of Japan, Akano said. She's been obsessed with it ever since she was little. Akano. Rias yelled blushing. By this time Asia and Kaneko had also joined them. It is, Naruhi said. How did you come to buy such a legendary sword? Rias asked. Muramasa and Masamune were my ancestors. Both blades made in their competition were kept throughout generations of my family. However, the swords were selective of their masters and would either refuse to be drawn in the case of Yakawari Tei or killed them in the case of Juchi Yomasu. But as currently the only living Uzumaki and the current clan head, the blades will answer to me but I must meditate with them regularly. I chose Juchi Yomasu as we will need its pure destructive power as a demon sword. It is a demon sword? Asia asked, a bit fearfully. Yes. The judge of the contest between my ancestors was apparently a deity we have yet to learn the identity of, other than he was extremely powerful. Him naming the swords good and evil caused them to be so, becoming holy and demonic swords. The group blinked before Rias gained stars in her eyes. That's so cool. I bet we are now the only ones who know outside your clan, right? Naruhi nodded a bit fearfully, backing up from Rias as she squealed. Yes. She exclaimed, a piece of genuine Japanese history that few know about. Is there anything else that you know that isn't common knowledge? I would rather not reveal too much of my family's history just yet, Rias, Naruhi said with a sweat drop. Rias pouted but backed up. She could respect that. But, she thought with a fire in her mind's eye, I will find out more of your clan's history, my pawn. Naruhi held her katana over her head as she went through some katas. She was in a clearing somewhere near the large clearing where Kaneko had beat her ass. The katas she was practicing were from a scroll she had found within the sheath of the Juchi Yosamu. They were basic katas on a style she believed one of her ancestors created for the blade. The Juchi Yosamu's blade, shining underneath the moonlight, was surprisingly not black but silver in color and seemed almost peaceful underneath the moonlight. From what the paper for when practicing katas, they should be practiced at night as the Juchi Yosamu will feel more at home, and would be easier to control. Not that it was a problem for her right now, she made a mental note to transfer the katas into a scroll or book outside the sheath. Kya! A girl's scream pierced the air. Naruhi turned and ran in the direction of the scream. She arrived at the larger clearing and felt her anger rising at the scene. Issei was standing a few yards away from a log with female clothes and Asia was next to it, without the first layer of her clothes. Asia-chan, Issei yelled and ran up to her and began apologizing, I'm so sorry Asia. I was aiming at the log then you ran in and I pointed at you and… Issei-san, he froze mid-sentence and turned slowly to see Naruhi glaring at him while holding a sword that glowed with an ominous black aura. You have 10 seconds to explain why Asia is almost naked and why her clothes are torn up and surrounding her. I was practicing a magic spell I'm developing that will destroy clothes and armor when Isa ran into the clear and I hit her instead of the dummy. Issei yelled in a fast manner. Naruhi stopped and tilted her head, explain. Issei sighed, I'm the weakest link in the peerage. I'm not good with a sword, magic, or hand-to-hand combat. But when we were in the kitchen I used magic to skin the potatoes. I realized there was a way to turn my pervy nature into a win for us. When I first activated my sacred gear, it tore the clothes off the blue-haired fallen angel. I figured if I could replicate it, I could use it so I wasn't too much dead weight for the others. Naruhi looked at the downed face of Issei while Asia tried to comfort him. She slowly sheathed her blade and walked up to Issei and flicked his head. He rubbed it in pain as she said, Baka. That's what training is for. You're not that good in everything because you never had a need or talent for it when you were human. Asia and I have already practiced with our sacred gears. I have experience in swordplay and hand-to-hand from when I was young. So you just need more time to get used to your power. Trust me, when you reach your true potential, there will be very few things and people that will be able to stop you. So when you're done being able to strip the clothes off the training pole, come and talk to me so I can get you some armor to practice with. As she walked away she ignored the grateful tears that ran down Issei's face. Before she left the clearing though she looked back and said, oh, and nice save with the second reason you're practicing this. Just know if you try that on me I will kill you. The peerage sat in a room looking at the Rias as she explained the history of the raiding game and the devil houses. Naruhi wondered how exactly this was training before thinking about it again. The House of Gremory, the House of Sitri, and the House of Fenix are 3 of the few remaining houses of the 72 pillars. For this reason devils have turned to turning other races into devils through the use of evil pieces. The raiding game came about sometime after. Through the game, the devils who are the masters of the households are able to provide themselves and their servants with combat experience as well as show off their own abilities. Raiding games also have a huge influence on one's nobility and status, which lower-class devils in the peerage can use to gain higher-class standing and possibly get their own evil piece set. Rias sighed and said, how about we take a break? I'll make some tea, Akeno said standing up, Asia standing up to help. Oh, Asia, Rias said before she could leave, I would like to hear your side of the story as a former sister. Oh, okay, Asia said. A few moments later and everyone was drinking tea while looking at Asia and the 2 items on the small stand beside her. This is holy water, Asia said, holding a glass container of water. Make sure you don't get any of this on you. Why? Issei asked. Something awful will happen. Awful how? Vague declarations make it even more dreadful. Naruhi looked at Issei. Imagine instead of water, that glass is filled with the most horrible and painful acid imaginable that you most likely won't completely heal from. Issei turned green a little. Naruhi thought, actually, if handled with care, maybe I could use holy water or something else to coat my bullets. Maybe. Naruhi's sweat dropped though as Asia struggled to read the Bible. She really hadn't let go of her previous life as a sister, had she? Enough of that, Rias said, before pulling up a magic screen showing some sort of forested area. I want you all to spend time observing this raiding game of risers. Try to see if you can develop a strategy to counter this one. After that we'll continue regular training. Middle sighed as she finished putting the horses in the stables. She knew that Naruhi needed to train for the raiding game, but she wished she would hurry up so that she wouldn't have to do this alone. Rainier had been less than helpful after the first day, as she seemed to be in a funk and always hanging out with Izanami. As Middle approached the house, a magic circle appeared in front of her and Ray came out of it. At that moment the cell phone Naruhi had given her and Rainier in case of emergencies rang. "Huh," she said as she answered the call. "Hello? Middle-chan," Naruhi said from the other side. "I need you to get Rainier and put me on speaker." Middle replied in an uncertain voice, "Sure." "Hey, Ray-chan, Naruhi needs to talk to us." The girl brightened and leapt over the fence of Izanami's corral. She came up beside Middle and said into the speaker, "What do you need, Naru-chan?" Now she's full of energy, Middle thought with a twitch. "Do either of you know how to make anti-venom?" Naruhi asked the now surprised fallen angels. "I do, though I haven't had a need to in a while," Rainier trailed off. "Good, because I need you to make an venom from Ray's fangs. Also, I need you to get me some holy water. Can you do that for me, Ray-chan?" "Middle-chan? Don't you worry about a thing, Naru-chan," Rainier said happily. "I'll have your anti-venom and holy water ready by the time you get back." "Thanks you guys. I have to go now, see you in 5 days." Middle closed the phone and was about to speak when she realized Rainier and Ray were gone. She looked off to the side to see Rainier standing over a magic circle with the Hydra dog. "Middle-chan, you can take care of everything here while I get the stuff Naru-chan said to get, right?" "You can, great, see you in a few days." She then disappeared before Middle could say anything. The girl fell to her knees and whispered, "How did Naruhi take care of this property without servants? How? And why am I cursed with a partner that is lazy when the subject doesn't interest her?" It was the day before their last day of training and Rias wanted to see the fruits of their labor. "Issei," Rias said, "activate your boosted gear." "Huh?" Issei said, confused, "But Bucko, you said not to use it during training?" "Not without my permission," Rias corrected. "I wonder if Yuto would mind being your partner?" "Not at all, Bucko," Kiba said, walking forward and getting into a ready stance in front of Issei. Said draconic devil activated his boosted gear. "Boost," the gear yelled. "Again," Rias commanded. "Boost." Again. Naruhi watched in confusion as Rias kept ordering Issei to boost his gear until she realized what Issei was doing. He wasn't fainting. Being able to boost his power 12 times in just 9 days, Naruhi thought with a smile. "I told you you would become powerful, Issei. But this is a surprise to me." "Now, Issei," Rias said after making him activating his explosion, "fire off a blast of magic power." Naruhi frowned at the small orb that Issei created. "It should be stronger than that, right?" She was taken aback as Issei fired it and blew off the top of a mountain. "Holy shit," she muttered before moving over to help Asia lift Issei up. "Issei," Rias said, turning to him, "you are the linchpin of the game. Your attack power will critically affect the way the game is moving. Believe in us, and most of all believe in yourself." "I told you so," Naruhi whispered to Issei. "Alright, everyone continue training. Issei, try to see if you can control your blasts to not take up so much of your power." "Hi," the group said before separating to train. Naruhi faced Yuto and said, "This time I'll get in 10 hits. I will not hold back," Yuto responded before they rushed each other. Naruhi sat in the shrine of her backyard, praying to her ancestors. She was currently in her casual clothes with a long chain wrapped around her, Juchi Yosamu strapped to her waist on her right. She was also wearing biker gloves with metal studs on the knuckles and around the wrists. Rias had said to wear clothes they felt were most appropriate. It was a small ritual she did before every competition she is in or one of her horses she has sold are in. She stood up and put out the candles in front of the pictures of her clan. Entering her home she saw Middle and Rainier resting on the couch. "I'm going now," Naruhi said, making Middle and Rainier nod. "I don't know when the game will end, so take care of things for me around here, please." The two fallen angels nodded and Naruhi walked over to a clear space to activate a magic circle, double-checking her ammo belt. As she was waiting for it to activate, she felt a tug on her sleeve. She turned to Rainier and asked, "Yeah, Ray-chan? What's?" She was cut off as Rainier kissed her. It was just for a moment and the fallen angel pulled back and whispered, "For good luck." Luckily for her, a blushing Naruhi disappeared before she could say anything to the fallen angel. Rainier walked back to sit next to Middle, who was smirking. "So are you now going to actually help out around the damn place, or are you just going to daydream the whole time?" Middle asked. Rainier huffed and picked up a remote, turning on the TV. She then clicked a button and a magic circle appeared in front of the remote, changing the view of the TV to that of an empty screen with a "please wait" sign. "I'm going to watch Naru-chan kick ass at the rating game," she said. "You want to join me?" Middle smiled and moved to sit next to her. "So Rias's older brother is the current Lucifer?" Naruhi asked herself as she looked between Graphia and Rias. The woman had just told them that the rating game was going to be broadcasted to the high-class devil families and the current leader of the devil faction. Graphia created a magic circle and the peerage of Rias Gremory entered it. Naruhi closed her eyes as the circle activated and after a moment opened her eyes. Despite how similar the club room seemed, the air around them seemed to be charged with energy. "Everyone," Graphia's voice echoed around the room. "I am Graphia, servant of the House of Gremory, and I have been assigned to be the referee for this rating game. For this battlefield, I took the suggestions of Lady Rias and Lords Riser, prepared a replica of Kuo Academy." Naruhi looked outside with Issei and Asia on the suggestion of Rias and saw that the sky was filled with green aurora lights. Pretty, Naruhi thought. The places to which both sides have been relocated will serve as their bases, Graphia continued. Rias Ojou, your home base is the Orc Room, in the old schoolhouse. Lord Riser's home base will be the principal's office in the new schoolhouse. As such, promotion will become possible for pawns once they make their way into each other's schoolhouses. Which means once I get inside the new schoolhouse, Issei said, smashing his fist into his hand, I can be promoted to a power rivaling the ultimate queen. Don't get, Issei, Naruhi said, you first have to make it to the schoolhouse. Not to mention if they get in our schoolhouse, they will be able to promote. So we have to keep our base tightly guarded. Kaneko came around and handed everyone a glowing orb that floated up to their ears. We'll use these to talk to each other on the battlefield. Alright. Graphia's voice rang out, game start. The enemy base is the new schoolhouse, Rias said as she laid out a map of the school grounds. Cutting across the school grounds would be the quickest way, but it's plainly visible from the new schoolhouse, Kaneko filled in. Yes, making it too risky. Then what if we used the track and field grounds in the rear to get to the new schoolhouse? Issei asked. They'll probably be expecting that and position several pawns near the athletic club house building here, Rias countered. A standard play, but also an ironclad one, Akeno added. Bucko, Yuto spoke up, shouldn't we secure the gymnasium first? It is adjacent to the new schoolhouse and fairly close to our base. It would provide a good distraction while we take it. Rias said, thinking it over as she surveyed the map like a chessboard. Yes. Kaneko, you will take the lead in capturing the gymnasium. Fighting and strategy is pretty hard, huh? Asia said. All we have to do is trust Bucko and obey her orders, Issei said. Before that though we need to secure a defensive line, Rias said. Yuto, Kaneko, go set some traps in the woods. Bucko, Naruhi said, if I may? I can summon Rei and have her use her heads as scouts and distractions in the forest. Rei herself can monitor their progress by your side. Rias nodded and Naruhi summoned the pack of dogs. Okay you guys, Naruhi said, go with Yuto and Kaneko. Once they set up the traps, monitor the perimeter and slow down anyone that isn't part of the peerage. Rei, stay with Rias and give her updates on people getting close to the old schoolhouse. The Hydras nodded and moved with Yuto and Kaneko out of the clubhouse. Rei took a position next to Rias, and her eyes glowed as she looked through the eyes of her other heads. Akeno, Rias said, once the traps are finished, would you cast illusion magic around the woods, including the sky for me? Hi, Akeno responded with a bow. And Bucko? Issei asked. Rias looked at them. My healing support personnel, Asia, will stand by here with me. If you fall, we're really stuck. Alright, Asia said. Issei, lay down right here, she gestured to her lap. What is she doing? Naruhi thought as she watched Issei lay his head down in her lap. Issei, I'm going to unlock a little bit of a spell I cast on you, she said. Rias put her hand on Issei's head and Naruhi felt the boy's power increase by a decent margin. I told you about how, Rias said, I had used a mutated pawn piece to revive you, Issei. Hi, Issei said. What I didn't tell you is that pawn had been a piece my brother traded with me, she said, shocking those in the room. As such, your body was unable to withstand that much power. So to keep you alive, I spread it out over several stages, and sealed them away. I just released a little bit of it. Then this power that is starting to well up inside my body is power that you already possessed, Rias filled in. Your training was not only for your boosted gear, but also for you to handle this power. Though there is still a good portion you're not ready for. I wonder how powerful will he be when he unlocks all of the power sealed away. Naruhi wondered, as the new amount of demonic energy in Issei was nothing to scoff at. Naruhi sighed as Asia sent a little prayer. The girl needed to move on, or she might just give herself a migraine that lasted forever. Listen to me, Issei, Rias said seriously. Your opponents may be girls, but be sure to defeat them. Don't hold back because they won't hold back. Understood, Issei said. I'll make sure to bring you victory, bucko. You better, Naruhi thought. You practicing your new move destroyed some good armor. Bucko, Akeno said over the comms, can you read me? Hi, I read you. We're ready. Rias stood up, knocking Issei to the floor. Okay, here's the plan. Naruhi stood alone on a tree, looking over the track. She had left Issei and Kaneko at the front of the old schoolhouse. When you get to the gymnasium, Rias continued, you won't be able to avoid a battle. Be sure to do as we discussed. Right, Issei and Kaneko said. Yuto, are you ready? As always. Kiba confirmed. Akeno, whenever the time is right, if you please. Hi, bucko. Naruhi, are you sure you can handle this? TCH, Naruhi scoffed, like hell I can't handle these guys. Commence the operation, my dear servants. Naruhi could feel the pride and happiness of Rias through the comms as she fingered her katana. Your opponent is Riser Fenix, an especially gifted warrior, even among his house. Now, let's go blow him away. Issei and Kaneko snuck into the gymnasium from the back of the building. Kaneko, Issei said, are they here? Hi, the white-haired devil said as the lights began turning on. We know you're over there, servants of Gremory, a female voice called out. I guess we've been had, Issei said. The rook, a black-haired girl wearing a revealing blue Chinese outfit, and the hot-headed pawn. Issei looked at the girls behind her. One was a blue-haired girl in what looked like some sort of Miko outfit, holding a bow staff, and two green-haired girls that must have been twins in gym clothes with duffel bags on their backs. I'm Mira, I'm a pawn, the Miko girl said. I'm Shuaren, a rook, the leader said. Eel, a pawn, the girl with the red duffel bag said. And Nell, also a pawn, the one with the blue bag said. That rook is high level, Kaneko said, narrowing her eyes, about queen level. Issei grimaced, then I'll have to try harder than I thought. Boosted gear. Issei, you take care of the pawns, I've got the rook. At worst, keep running away from them. Don't worry about me, there is a chance I can beat them. The two jumped forward to engage the group. Meanwhile, in the forest around the old schoolhouse, a group of Riser's pawns were trying to make their way through the fog. This fog is thick, huh? Said one of the girls in a French-made outfit. They dodged the trap that sent spears of demonic energy. As they landed and continued to insult the other peerage, a howl pierced the air right next to them. What was that? One of them demanded as one of them whirled to the spot. So that's where they are, Yuto muttered as he moved in the direction of the howl. Back in the gym, Kaneko was on the defensive as Shuaren used a kick fighting style to keep Kaneko back, her feet on fire. Kaneko tried to counter when the girl kicked up, destroying part of Kaneko's outfit. Meanwhile, Issei struggled to stay out of the way of Myra's bow staff and the twins' chainsaws. Kaneko managed to grab Shuren's leg and proceeded to go on the offensive, punching Shuaren in the face and shoulders, slamming them while they tried to monologue. Cut you up, the twins repeated as they chased Issei around. Come on, they need to be bunched together, he thought. He got his wish when he jumped over Mira. Now, explosion. He broke Myra's staff as she whirled around to hit him and touched her shoulder. He then dodged around the two chainsaw maniacs and hit them on their backs. Take this, my special move, dress break. The three girls screamed as they were left zero clothing, even the shreds were barely patches of cloth. Issei laughed as he deactivated his sacred gear. The girls on the ground too busy trying to cover themselves up to try and attack. This all thanks to you two, Asia-chan, Naruhi-chan. Issei said as tears streamed from his eyes. I've lost all respect for you, Kaneko deadpanned at him. Issei, Kaneko, Rias said over the comms, status update. We've taken the gym, Issei said. Good, Akano is ready to proceed. Continue with the plan. Issei and Kaneko nodded to each other and bolted out of the gymnasium. A moment later a giant lightning bolt destroyed the gym. 3 of Lord Riser's pawns, and 1 of his rooks, are incapacitated, Grafia voice rang out. The terror is just starting, Rias said over the comms. The enemy has greater numbers and Akano will need time to prepare her second attack. Continue with the next phase of the plan. Which was? Issei asked turning to Kaneko. Meet up with Kiba at the track and eliminate any enemies there and won the way, she said. Where did it go? A member of Riser's peerage said as the building in front of her group disappeared. Ah, what a shame, Yuto said from behind them. Next to him was San who disappeared back into the forest. You cannot leave now. You're inside a barrier our queen made. Damn it, one of the girls cursed. When outnumbered, it is best to use your wits, Kiba said. Do you really think you can beat us 3-on-1? One of them challenged. Kiba smirked. Want to find out? Well, come on then, Kaneko, Issei said, trying to pat her on the shoulder only for her to move away. Hentai, she muttered and walked ahead of him. He made to follow when an explosion went off between them, throwing him back. Kaneko, Issei yelled out. He ran toward her naked, downed form as a woman laughed from above them. Issei. Rias yelled, what happened to Kaneko? Issei, answer me. Change of plans. Naruhi listened to Rias. I'm going to circle around for a sneak attack. Naruhi stopped listening after she said that. Rias was taking a huge risk in leaving the base. She tapped her ear, I'll clear the way. She jumped down from her position in the tree and glared at the surrounding area. As she walked forward she frowned heavily. If you aren't going to face me, she said as she stopped in the middle of the field, then fall. She shifted into a stance and drew Juchi Yosamu with a slash. Silent night, she whispered. The air in front of the blade glimmered before a giant wave of black energy expelled from the blade. It traveled all the way to the new schoolhouse and through everything in its path. After a moment the first few buildings and trees collapsed, revealing a group of Riser's peerage members. She glared at them, so, who wants to feed my blade their blood? A girl in heavy armor approached her, making her focus her attention on her. I believe it was foolish of you to challenge us all by yourself. However, I will accept your challenge. The girl rushed Naruhi and swung her flaming sword at her. Naruhi leaned to the side and leveled a strike at the armored knight. The woman tried to shield herself, only for Juchi Yosamu to cut through the blade in her armor, cutting into her till it hit her spine. Naruhi pulled out Juchi Yosamu and turned back around as the woman disappeared. One of Riser's knights has retired. I knew Carlamine's headstrong nature would come back to bite her, the blonde girl in the pink dress said. I suggest you all surrender if you do not wish for Juchi Yosamu to taste your blood, Naruhi said, turning to the girl. Do you wish to fight me next? Oh no, I won't be fighting, the girl waved off. Why won't you fight? The Lady Revel Fenix does not need to fight, a woman with a mask said. I see, Naruhi said before in a blur shot the girl in the priestess outfit between her shoulder. Her handgun was pistol in her right hand, her sword in her left. Mahai. Revel held and flew over to her. She gave her a small vial which seemed to heal her momentarily before she collapsed and started to shake. Revel turned to glare at Naruhi. What did you do to her? The bullets in this gun are coated in venom from the Hydra, Naruhi said uncaringly. I'm sure if you give the girl more tears she will heal. However, my whole belt is full of more than enough rounds to force you to quit and be treated by the antidote I have given to the on standby healers. So, which will it be? Use you tears or surrender? That's cheating, one of them yelled. There are no rules against it as there has never been a case of someone using Hydra venom as no one had gained a Hydra's trust enough to use their venom to make anti-venom. The other group growled before the girl Mahai whispered, I surrender. One of Lord Riser's bishops has retired, Grafia's voice rang out, which seemed to key the others to attack. Naruhi jumped away from the twin cat girls and fired a few bullets to keep them back. She was forced to go defensive as the woman in the mask attacked. The group however was distracted by a yell from behind Naruhi. Naruhi. We're here to help. Issei and Yuto had arrived. The knight currently fighting her had been distracted just enough for Naruhi to turn Juchi Yosamu to its edge and cut through her sword before impaling her. She quickly sheathed it as blood-filled thoughts started entering her head. "Continue to the schoolhouse," she said back, "I can handle them." The two hesitated before nodding, running past Revel, who protested. Naruhi was currently having a double-team fist fight. While she would admit her hits were harder, the other two hit her faster, which was starting to take its toll. Finally, after a minute of exchanging blows, Naruhi jumped back enough to grab her pistol again and shot the girls in their legs, 2 for each leg. Naruhi dropped down and reloaded as they disappeared. Lord Riser's pawns and knight have retired. She walked toward Revel, who backed up, the gun leveled at her. "If you aren't going to fight," Naruhi said, "you don't need to be on the playing field." Lady Rias's queen retired. Graphia's words stopped Naruhi in her tracks. Lady Rias's knight has retired. But Akano had more power. Naruhi was cut short as an explosion hit her and sent her flying back to the tree she was previously in. Luckily her clothes were mostly intact. She tried to stand only for a chain of large explosions to go off around her. With Revel she looked as her brother's queen Yubaluna lighted down besides her. "Lady Revel, you should retreat for now. I'll be going to assist your brother with the Gremory heiress and her remaining members." As the two left, they never noticed that Graphia did not call out Naruhi's retirement. Amidst the flames of the explosions, Naruhi slowly stood up. Half of the flesh on her face was blown off, the Juchi Yosamu and her pistol laid by her side. The only piece of clothing left on her was some rags that hid her womanly parts and her jacket. She glared at the after the retreating figures of the bomber queen and bishop. She bent down to pick up her pistol before summoning Rei to retrieve Juchi Yosamu. The blood dripping down her fleshless right arm began to steam as she began marching toward the schoolhouse, the rest of the flesh on her face burning away as she caught fire. "I'm going to burn this pawn for daring to defy me," Riser said as he glared down at Issei. After all, deaths in raiding games are seen as accidents. The boy had not only fired such a high-grade beam of energy, he had tried to continue to fight even when he was out of power. He was denying the will of the Fenix clan and must be punished. Issei glared at Riser as he prepared to bring down the fireball. "Stop, Riser!" Rias cried as she ran out to throw herself in front of Issei. However, right as she was aligned with Issei, a lasso made of chains grabbed them both and pulled them down to ground level. "What?" Riser yelled as the chain reappeared again and pulled down Asia. As Yubaluna settled down beside him he turned to glare at however had denied him his kill and promptly yelled, "What the fuck is that?" Handing Asia and Issei off to Rias was a burning skeleton, wearing a jacket with sharp spikes on its shoulders and gloves. It wore boots with metal spikes on its toes and had a chain wrapped around it from shoulder to waist. Besides that it was also wearing ripped boxers and holding a pistol. "Rei," Naruhi said, "retreat." "Rei, cover." From behind Rias a fully formed Rei picked up the weakened devils and began making a very fast retreat. As she was carried away Rias whispered, "Good luck, Naruhi." Naruhi turned back to Riser and Yubaluna. Riser, angered that this beast had denied his victory, yelled, "You think your flames are better than mine, a Fenix?" Yubaluna, "Destroy this thing. I'm going after Rias and that Hydra." With that a purple magic circle appeared underneath Naruhi and created a large explosion. However, before Riser could take off, 6 glowing streaks shot past him and hit Yubaluna in the chest and arms, making her fade away. Lord Riser's queen has retired. Riser turned back to where Naruhi had been and paled slightly as Naruhi seemed totally unaffected save for some dirted clothing. The barrel of her gun was glowing white hot. She lowered the gun and said, "Riser. You are guilty." Riser lost his momentary fear and roared in outrage, "And what am I guilty of? I have done nothing wrong." He disappeared from sight and reappeared in front of Naruhi and proceeded to beat her with an ever-growing amount of flames. He smiled as he saw her jaw come loose and backed up as the burning skeleton fell backwards. He lost his smile though as she stopped falling, her legs knees at a perfect 90-degree angle. She rose back up and slowly moved her jaw back into place before wagging her finger at Riser. "Why, you monster?" Riser yelled before throwing another fireball that stopped in front of her and changed into a red flame like those adorning her skeleton. She then flicked it back towards him. Riser smirked and laughed, "You fool, I'm descended from the great Phoenix." I am immune to FLAAAMES. What is this? Riser screamed in pain as the red flames began to eat at his skin. Naruhi slowly returned to her human form and closed her open jacket. Those flames are now holy flames, which only I can control. They will burn until I say stop. And since they are holy, they basically limit your immortality to slowly lose against them. So surrender or die. Riser continued to scream in pain while at a distance away. Fenix watched in horror. You asked what you were guilty of, Riser Fenix, Naruhi said as she reached her hand into the flame. Her flesh burning away to leave only the skeleton to grab Chin to make him look her in the eyes. You made Rias cry. I surrender. Riser screamed out. The flames retreated into the skeletal hand before turning into flesh once again. Different magic circles appeared underneath the remaining players before disappearing. Naruhi reappeared in the real clubroom and was immediately tackled in a hug by Rias, who was crying thank you over and over again into her shirt. Smiling, Naruhi patted the emotionally distraught girl and looked back at the other members, who were awake or trying to stay awake. They all were smiling and congratulating her. Naruhi managed to lift her and Rias up to move them over to the rest of them, who all shared a moment in a group hug. Life was good. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.